Stonehenge wasn't a witchy monument to travel through time. It was actually constructed as a hope to build a different future. Recent research just found out that the monument was probably raised as an attempt to reunite the Britons during a period of big division. The thread of this story lies on the altar stone, the monument's most iconic rock. For years, scientists believed that the stones used in Stonehenge, including the altar stone, came from the nearby Preseli Hills in Wales. In this scenario, Stonehenge would have been built by a local community, that is, Neolithic people who would have found easy-to-access materials to build a ceremonial mound, a sundial calendar, and a final resting place, all in one. Things changed when another discovery was made. In 2018, leading-edge research pointed that the altar stone actually came from the River Tay region in northeastern Scotland, which is located over 400 miles away from Stonehenge. Scientists found similar rocks as such in Scottish monuments. You see, the altar stone is a recumbent stone, laying on its side. Many of the rocks were found in ceremonial stone circles in Scotland, and they are unique to this region. When this discovery broke through, it got archaeologists thinking. Maybe Stonehenge wasn't just a local project, but a wider collaboration between different tribes and communities across Britain. To understand this, we need to rewind to around 3000 BCE. That's when Britain still wasn't a unified country per se. Rather, it was a patchwork of tribes such as those coming from southern or eastern Europe, each with their own customs and beliefs. As an island, Britain's population changed many times. Britain was mainly composed of farmers who descended from people from the Middle East and arrived on the land around 6,000 years ago. This group thrived in the area until 2500 BCE, when another group coming from the regions of the Netherlands and Germany started to appear. These ones, also known as the Beaker people, were responsible for the large population turnover that Britain experienced during the Neolithic period and the years that followed. The Beakers were called so because of a specific type of pottery they used to make and bury their loved ones with after their passing. It's possible that the original dwellers of the land didn't like it that their land was being repopulated. And what researchers suggest is that Stonehenge was this attempt to reunite the original Neolithic farmer population and regain some type of identity control over their land. They would have invested a lot of time and energy in bringing the altar stone all the way down from Scotland, without the help of wheel technology, for example. You see, the wheel had already been invented in Lower Mesopotamia, but since there was no Wi-Fi at the time, the Brits weren't aware of this technology until much later on. This whole territorial crisis could have driven locals to use their resources to move the altar stone to Salisbury Plain in England, in order to reunify the land. You see, Stonehenge wasn't built in one go. Its history dates to around 3000 BCE. That's when the monument was just a circular ditch and bank, known as a henge. Inside, they placed wooden posts and possibly totem-like carvings. This version of Stonehenge wasn't about rocks yet. It was more of a ritualistic place and possibly a final resting place. They found several cremation pits from this period, making it the oldest resting place in all of Britain. It was only around 2600 BCE that the blue stones came around. The naming might be a bit misleading since they're not literally blue rocks. They have a bluish tinge to them when they're freshly broken, hence the name. These smaller rocks probably came from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, which is about 150 miles away from Stonehenge. Some researchers say that the ancient ones believed that blue stones had healing qualities. So we can maybe guess why they went through all of the trouble to move them from Wales to Salisbury Plains, huh? A little bit later than that, circa 2500, that's when we start having the Stonehenge we know and love today. That's when the Sarsen stones started to arrive. The Sarsens are Stonehenge's huge stones. I mean, each sarsen can weigh around 25 tons. That's as much as 3 African elephants stacked together. The Sarsens make that iconic outer ring circle. Supposedly, that's also when the altar stone was moved from Scotland directly to the heart of Stonehenge. The altar stone is the largest of the blue stones used to build Stonehenge. Today, the altar stone lies recumbent at the foot of the largest trilithon of the monument. In case you don't know, the trilithons are the horizontal stones used to form those famous arches we see today. And here's where the story takes a twist. For nearly a century, scientists believe that the altar stone came from the same area as the blue stones, the Preseli Hills in Wales. It made sense back then. If you're already hauling stones from Wales, why not grab a special one to be the so-called altar? Except that theory started crumbling in 2018, when a team of researchers decided to dig deeper. They used advanced geochemical analysis to pinpoint where the altar stone's sandstone actually came from, and it turns out it wasn't Wales. Instead, the results pointed north, specifically to the Orcadian Basin in northeastern Scotland, 400 miles from Stonehenge. This revelation changed the whole script of Stonehenge's story. How would they move the rocks, you may ask? Well, there's an old theory known as the ice road that suggests that the rocks were moved by natural icy pathways that formed during the winter. This way, they could slide the rocks down all the way to Stonehenge. But hey, if we're talking about a distance of over 100 miles, that's not too realistic. Anyways, this theory was debunked because it was warmer back then than it is today. There's also the river theory that suggests that the rocks were floating along the river from the quarry to the site. But if we're talking about Sarsen rocks, they're too heavy to float. So there goes this theory. What we're saying is, no one knows how the rocks were moved. Another interesting info came from all the research done in Stonehenge. A recent laser survey of the stones revealed the different stone working methods used and has shown that some parts of the monument were more carefully finished than others. In particular, the northeast side and the inner faces of the central trilithons were finely dressed. FYI, a trilithon is one of Stonehenge's most famous shapes. It's when 2 huge monoliths receive a third one on top of them, connecting the 2 together. This fancy word is just Greek for having 3 stones. But anyway, the bigger question, and maybe why Stonehenge is so famous, is why it was built in the first place. You see, Stonehenge's entire layout seems to have been carefully planned to align with the movements of the sun. The monument's architecture is particularly attuned to the solstices, the shortest and longest days of the year. During the summer solstice, the sun rises perfectly in line with the heel stone, casting light straight into the heart of the stone circle. A spectacular, almost magical sight that surely wowed its ancient audience. But it's the midwinter solstice that seems to hold a special connection to the altar stone. As the sun sets on that day, its light aligns with the altar stone at the center of Stonehenge. To the builders of Stonehenge, this alignment may have symbolized more than just celestial precision. It likely carried profound ancestral and spiritual significance. The altar stone, illuminated by the setting sun, could have been seen as a bridge between worlds, connecting the living with their ancestors, the earth with the cosmos, and the present with the eternal. In a world without calendars, clocks, or weather apps, the solstices were everything. They marked the rhythm of life, guiding agricultural cycles and spiritual rituals alike. So Stonehenge wasn't just about the stones or the people who built it, but perhaps a way to honor their ancestral roots in an ever-changing world.
Recently, scientists made an astonishing discovery that might solve Stonehenge's mystery. They found something hidden deep within the DNA of Stonehenge's Sarsen rocks, the huge monolithic ones, and it might reveal why our Neolithic ancestors designed and built this thing in the first place. Over the years, scientists have been scratching their heads trying to figure out where the huge Sarsen rocks came from. For years, they believed they came from a quarry just 15 miles away from the site, known as Marlborough Downs. At this site, they found similar minerals to the ones that make up the Sarsen rocks. But it turned out there was more to this story than they thought. The understanding of how Stonehenge was built is always changing. Scientists need to really travel back in time to uncover its mysteries. Where did the rocks come from? How were they carried? Why was the site built? You see, the Stonehenge site, located at Salisbury Plain in England, is made up of two main types of stone. There are the super heavy Sarsens and the lighter and smaller bluestones. The Sarsens each weigh about 25 tons. That's as much as 3 African elephants stacked together. The heaviest Sarsen stone, called the heel stone, weighs 30 tons all by itself. Together, the Sarsens make that iconic outer ring circle. Inside that circle, that's where you'll find the bluestones. The naming might seem a bit misleading since they're not really blue. They have a bluish tinge to them when they are freshly broken, hence the name. These smaller rocks probably came from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, which is about 150 miles away from Stonehenge. They're a bit lighter than the Sarsens, but still pretty heavy. The altar stone, which is classified as a bluestone, is the heaviest one, weighing around 6 tons. Its original location still isn't known for sure. To figure out where a rock came from, scientists first have to study their composition. This is like checking the rock's DNA. Then they cross-reference the structure of the rock with minerals in the soil to see if it's a match. Most of the Sarsens we see around southern England are actually made of a type of sandstone known as silcrete. Think of silcrete as sand that's been hardened by underground water processes over millions of years. This process mostly happened during a period called the Paleogene, about 65 to 23 million years ago. These Sarsen rocks didn't form in one big slab, but in patches, like nature leaving little rock gardens all over the place. Scientists reason the Sarsens spread out randomly, forming in isolated pockets. Over time, many were buried under layers of clay and chalk, which helped preserve them. When ancient builders were on the lookout for materials, these Sarsens must have looked perfect for something impressive like Stonehenge. Actually, Sarsens have been used in everything, from Roman villas to medieval churches, and even in things like road curbs and old field walls. One could say these rocks were the it material for ancient builders, and continue to be popular even into more modern times. This fact made scientists start wondering that maybe not all Sarsen stones that were used to build Stonehenge came from the same place. They've identified Sarsen sites all over the UK, in places such as Oxfordshire and Kent. After hundreds of years of studying the Sarsens, geologists finally had the right type of technology to determine the origin of the stones. Now, I wish I could tell you that it was some undisclosed location very far away from the site. But, as it turned out, the Sarsens were originally from Westwoods, the forest near Stonehenge. A new factor came into play when excavations uncovered empty stone holes, showing that at least 6 bluestone pillars were removed from a Preseli Hills site called Wan Main in prehistory. They had a stone circle over there, and it's believed that some of Stonehenge's rocks were recycled rocks from this more ancient circle. If this is true, it might be that Stonehenge is part of a much larger landscape of ancient sites. If this is the case, then Stonehenge is just the cherry on top of a much larger scale project. Think of it as the sacred centerpiece of an entire landscape of monuments, mounds, stone circles, and things. This is why scientists want to find out where the rocks came from so badly. It could lead to why and how Stonehenge was built. Now, Stonehenge didn't just pop up overnight. It was built in several stages over hundreds of years. It's likely that it wasn't a single unified vision, but more like a big community project that evolved over time. With each generation, the builders brought in their own ideas, creating a stone structure that would last for ages. The first stage was around 3100 BCE. That's when people dug out a circular ditch and likely set up some bluestones as sort of a starter ring. Later they added the Saracens and even topped some of them with horizontal stones to form those famous arches you see today, also known as the trilithons. These ancient builders had some challenges on their hands. How would they move the rocks? There's an old theory known as the ice road that suggests that the rocks were moved by natural icy pathways that formed during the winter. This way, they could slide the rocks down all the way to Stonehenge. But hey, if we're talking about a distance of over 100 miles, that's not too realistic. Anyways, this theory was debunked because it was warmer back then than it is today. There's also the river theory, which suggests that the rocks were floated along the river from the quarry to the site. But if we're talking about Sarsen rocks, they're too heavy to float. So there goes that theory. What we're saying is, no one knows how the rocks were moved. Another interesting science tidbit came from all the research done in Stonehenge. A recent laser survey of the stones revealed the different stone working methods used, and has shown that some of the parts of the monument were more carefully finished than others. In particular, the northeast side and the inner faces of the central trilithons were finely dressed. FYI, a trilithon is one of Stonehenge's most famous shapes. It's when two huge monoliths receive a third one on top of them, connecting the two together. This fancy word is simply Greek for having three stones. But anyways, the bigger question, and the reason Stonehenge is so famous, is why it was built in the first place. Theories are all over the place, and some sound like they're straight out of a sci-fi show. So here's a rundown of the most popular ideas. There's, of course, the solar calendar theory. This one supposes that the stones are aligned with the movements of the sun, especially during the summer and winter solstices. During the summer solstice, the sun rises to the left of the heel stone, that's the lone stone outside the main circle, lighting up the entire monument. Some say it's the ancient version of a calendar, marking the year's longest and shortest days. Some archaeologists think Stonehenge might have been an ancient healing center. Pieces of bluestone have been found chipped away, possibly by people who believed they had healing powers. The theory goes that people traveled from all over to come to Stonehenge in hopes of a cure for whatever was ailing them. There's also some speculation that Stonehenge was the place to be. Think of it as an ancient gathering spot. Some evidence suggests that communities from distant areas traveled to Stonehenge for gatherings, feasts, and ceremonies. Studies of bones found near the site show they came from all over Britain, making it a sort of prehistoric meetup location. Hey, if you think Stonehenge is one of the oldest stone monuments ever, well, let me introduce you to Göbekli Tepe. Buckle up, we gotta travel to Turkey to meet this really old guy. Yeah, he's too old to travel. Jokes aside, Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site located in southeastern Turkey that dates back to the Neolithic period, around 10,000 BCE. It's considered to be one of the oldest and most significant archaeological discoveries in recent times. The site consists of a series of circular and rectangular structures made of stone pillars. Yeah, it does look like its younger brother Stonehenge. Some of those pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and other symbols. Now, you maybe wonder, hey, why on earth did they make such a fascinating building? What was its purpose? Sorry, I got no answer for that. The purpose of the site is still unknown, but it is believed to have been a ceremonial center for the ancient people who lived in the area. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has challenged long-held beliefs about the development of human civilization, as it suggests that complex societies may have emerged much earlier than previously thought. Okay, pack your stuff, our travels just started. Next destination, Masada. It's an ancient fortress located in Israel on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea. Hey, look at that view, spectacular, huh? It was built by King Herod the Great in the 1st century BCE, and it was very smartly built. Within the fortress, there were various facilities such as storehouses, barracks, a palace, and a set of cisterns capable of holding approximately 40,000 cubic meters of rainwater. People living there believed that the collected runoff from a single day's rainfall could provide sustenance for over 1,000 individuals for a period of 2 to 3 years. Access to the fortress was limited to 3 steep and winding paths leading up to fortified gates. Still, at one point, the fortress was occupied by people who had fled Jerusalem after the city was captured by the Romans. They held out against the invaders for several months, but eventually they were defeated. But these guys didn't surrender. The story of Masada has become a symbol of resistance and bravery. Today, Masada is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The next flight is going to be short. We're popping over to Egypt to see the Karnak Temple Complex. It's a vast ancient Egyptian temple complex located in the city of Luxor, Egypt. It was built over a period of 2,000 years and covers an area of more than 200 acres. The complex is dedicated to the worship of the deity Amun-Roka. Wait a minute, that should be Amun-Ra, and it was one of the most important religious centers in ancient Egypt. The Karnak Temple consists of several temples, chapels, and other buildings, including the Great Temple of Amun, the Temple of Khonsu, and the Temple of Ptah. Ptah! The Great Temple of Amun is the largest and most impressive temple in the complex, with massive columns, statues, and other decorations. One of the most famous features of the Karnak Temple complex is the Avenue of Sphinxes, which is a long avenue lined with Sphinx statues that leads from the entrance of the complex to the Great Temple of Amun. Another notable feature is the Hypostyle Hall, which is a massive hall with 134 columns that are over 70 feet high. The Karnak Temple complex is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's considered one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt and provides a fascinating glimpse into the religion and culture of ancient Egypt. Hey, we can't hop on the next flight and leave Egypt until we see the Pyramid of Djoser. It has another name, by the way. It's also known as the Step Pyramid. This ancient Egyptian site is located in Saqqara. It was built during the 27th century BCE for the pharaoh Djoser by his architect Imhotep, who is considered one of the most important figures in Egyptian history. People believe this pyramid is the first monumental structure built entirely of stone and is an important example of early Egyptian architecture. The pyramid originally stood at 203 feet tall and was surrounded by a complex of buildings and courtyards. It was constructed in 6 layers, each smaller than the one below it, giving it the distinctive step-like appearance. The pyramid was used as a burial place for Pharaoh Djoser and was surrounded by a vast necropolis that contained the tombs of many other important officials. The Grateful Dead? The Pyramid of Djoser has several renovations and additions over the centuries, including the addition of a limestone casing that covered the original step structure. However, much of the pyramid was destroyed over time, and today only the central core remains. Despite this, it remains an important archaeological site and a popular tourist attraction in Egypt. Alrighty, we're ready to move on. There's one more pretty recent discovery we gotta see today. The Tower of Jericho was only discovered during excavations in the 1950s and 60s. It's an ancient stone tower located in the city of Jericho in the West Bank. Just like Göbekli Tepe, this one is believed to be one of the oldest stone structures in the world, dating back to approximately 8000 BCE. The tower stands at over 28 feet tall. It's made up of 2 main sections, an inner tower and an outer tower, which are connected by a series of stairs. The purpose of the Tower of Jericho is not entirely clear, but it is believed to have served as a defensive structure or a watchtower. It may have also had religious significance, as it was located near a sacred spring. The Tower of Jericho is a significant archaeological site and has provided valuable insights into the early history of human civilization. It's open to visitors and is a popular destination for tourists interested in ancient history. Now, this ancient site even got attention from Netflix, and they made a movie where the action takes place in Mohenjo-Daro. This site was a major center of the Indus Valley civilization in present-day Pakistan. Mohenjo-Daro was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, with a population estimated to have been around 40,000 in its peak. Trust me, that must have been a crazy megalopolis back then. The city was notable for its advanced urban planning, with sophisticated drainage and sanitation systems, and its impressive architecture, including the Great Bath and the Granary. Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned around 1900 BCE, and its ruins were only rediscovered in the 1920s. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an important archaeological site for the study of ancient South Asian civilization. We're heading to a teeny-tiny country that has quite an impressive history. Welcome to Malta. The Xigantia Temples are a Neolithic site located on the Mediterranean island of Gozo. They're probably one of the oldest freestanding structures in the world, dating back to around 3600 to 3200 BCE. The temples consist of two megalithic structures, each with multiple rooms and altars. The name Xigantia means giant tower in Maltese, as people believe that only giants could have built such massive structures. The temples are believed to have been used for religious purposes and are considered to be an important example of prehistoric architecture. They were added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1980. Well, you must be pretty tired, but there's one more place we gotta visit today. Our plane is already landing in Armenia, and we're here to see the Temple of Garni. Look, this one is well preserved. This temple dates back to the 1st century CE. It was built by King Tartesos I as a dedication to the sun deity Mir. Sadly, the temple was destroyed in the 17th century during an earthquake, which is quite a common thing for this area, but it was later reconstructed in the 20th century. Today, it's a popular tourist attraction and is also listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
AI can drive a car, design trendy clothes, give you emotional support, and it looks like it can also help us find answers to centuries-long mysteries. Researchers from Yamagata University Institute of Nazca and IBM Japan used a deep learning AI model to find new Nazca lines. Those are distinct white lines on the rusty red background that you can see from a plane while flying over the deserts of southern Peru. Scientists have tried to decipher the meaning of the Nazca lines ever since they were first discovered in the 1920s. There are straight lines, rectangles, triangles, and swirls. There are also some giant drawings. You can see a monkey, a whale, a condor, a hummingbird. The 4 recently discovered geoglyphs, which is the scientific word for those drawings, show a humanoid-like figure holding a club, a fish, a bird, and a pair of legs. What is the hidden symbolism of all that? And why did the Nazca people decide to draw a humanoid in the desert? And did they even know who humanoids were? Let's dig into history to find some answers. The representatives of the ancient Nazca culture created their famous lines more than 2,000 years ago. The geoglyphs have stood the test of time thanks to a dry climate and strong winds in the desert. Scientists found that to form the lines, the Nazca people scraped off the top layer of pebbles, revealing the contrasting soil beneath. The soil's color varies from reddish-brown to yellowish-gray. It makes it look like the lines are constantly changing appearance. It looks like the creators first made small-scale models and then enlarged them to create the full-scale designs we see today. In total, there are more than 800 straight lines, around 300 geometric figures, and 70 animals and plant designs. You can find the first mention of the lines in the 16th century Chronicle of Peru, where they were first described as trail markers in the desert. Since you can't really study the lines and their symbolism from the ground, those geoglyphs only became world famous only in the 1930s. It was the start of the era of commercial planes, so more and more people could witness the lines from their window seats and spread the word. During his research a decade later, Professor Paul Kosuk noticed that one of the lines aligned with the setting sun on the day after the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year. He supposed that the lines had some astronomical significance. German researcher Maria Reiche, who got the nickname the Lady of the Lines, supported the theory that the geoglyphs served as a calendar and some sort of astronomical purposes. She spent 40 years studying the lines and literally swept them inch by inch. She also moved into a small house close to the lines to protect them from unwanted visitors. And that's how the Nazca Lines mystery was solved. Just kidding. In the 1970s, American researchers began to question astronomical theory. In a region like Nazca, one of the driest places on Earth with only around 20 minutes of rain per year, water is a real treasure. So the straight lines and trapezoids could have something to do with it. They could have been an ancient version of Google Maps, pointing at locations for rituals that the local people organized to get some water and help their crops grow. The images of animals in the Andes region are also related to water. Spiders are thought to be a sign of rain. Hummingbirds symbolize fertility, and monkeys living in the Amazon mean an abundance of water. That could explain the choice of symbols in the desert, but there's no strong proof to support this theory. So the work on explaining the meaning of those mysterious geoglyphs is going on. In the 21st century, the Nazca Lines have become the research ground for archaeologists from Yamagata University. Masato Sakai, a professor of archaeology, together with others on the team, are using high-resolution aerial photography and drones to discover and catalog the lines. They found images of humans, camelids, birds, orca whales, cats, and snakes, most likely created between 100 before current era and 300 current era. Some of the images are around 10 to 20 feet long, and that's why they were pretty tricky to notice. The largest geoglyphs are 1,200 feet across, which is about the height of the Empire State Building. The researchers believe the Nazca Lines were a form of communication in the desert for their creators. The linear ones pointed the direction from valley to valley. The ones drawn on slopes seem to have been drawn along ancient pathways between settlements. Professor Sakai explains that discovering new lines is tricky. Some of them are so poorly preserved that it's hard to spot them in aerial photos. There are also irrigation systems and roads all across the Nazca region, and it complicates the task. And that's where AI comes in handy. The team showed it pictures of previously explored Nazca Lines so it could learn what to look for. Then, AI went through tons of footage taken from planes and satellites and also laser data from previous surveys to identify the lines scientists hadn't found before. The system works 21 times faster than humans, and it made some curious discoveries. Scientists then traveled to the locations it chose to verify the findings. In 2019, AI helped to discover a humanoid-shaped character with a rectangular head who is holding a stick and wearing a headdress. It became a real puzzle for the scientists trying to understand the creature's role in ancient society. The little guy is neighbors with another famous geoglyph. It's a hermit, which is a subgroup of hummingbirds that lives in the forested regions of northern and eastern Peru. The largest of the recently found geoglyphs is a pair of legs. It's more than 250 feet across, about 4/5 as tall as Big Ben. Could be an homage to some ancient supermodel. The fish and the bird are around 4 times smaller. Why they are where they are is still a mystery. Listing new geoglyphs isn't the only way AI is helping scientists. It's doing a lot of good for astronomy. It analyzes vast amounts of astronomical data and uses its algorithms to identify patterns, classify celestial objects, and even predict new events. For example, AI models have been developed to detect and categorize galaxies, search for exoplanets, and identify rare cosmic phenomena. It also helped analyze data obtained by the Kepler mission to discover new Earth-sized planets circling other stars. AI is also transforming the field of chemistry. Machine learning algorithms can predict chemical reactions, discover new compounds, and optimize chemical processes. All of this helps scientists save a lot of time and resources in the labs. If you've ever written a thesis, you know that analyzing vast chunks of information can take forever. Now imagine you need to analyze the archives of the British Library's national newspaper. It's piles and piles of history. So, researchers are teaming up with the curators to develop special software that can analyze the vast amounts of data extracted from these collections. Computational linguists and historians will be able to delve deep into the past and get some insights into changes in society and culture. They'll focus on key periods and track how advancements in technology shaped various aspects of society. AI even helps in the conservation of seals. It's really expensive and challenging to monitor certain species of those cutie pies living in the sea ice zone. Using high-resolution satellites, researchers can now identify the seals in photos, which already helps. But manually counting seals across huge areas of ice is like putting together a jigsaw puzzle of a blue sky consisting of 1 million pieces. It takes a lot of patience, and different analysts come up with different results. Machine learning algorithms can be trained to recognize and distinguish seals in satellite imagery and count them automatically. Researchers can then use this accurate data to monitor seal populations over time and study their behavior and habitat more effectively.
There's this interesting ancient site near St. Louis, Missouri, that a lot of people don't know about. It's called Cahokia, and it used to be a huge city with up to 20,000 people living there back in the 11th century. It's full of these massive earthen mounds that were built by hand, and the biggest one is still there today, at the Cahokia Mound State Historic Site. Even though we don't know everything about this civilization, researchers have been able to piece together some information from the remains they've found. For starters, they found some pretty old teeth at this site. After studying their appearance and structure, scientists suggest that a lot of different indigenous groups lived there. About a third of them came from other areas in the middle of the continent, which they figured out by studying the different levels of various substances in the teeth. And get this, the way the mounds are arranged shows that this was actually a planned-out city, not just a bunch of villages grouped together. The rulers lived on top of the mounds, while everyone else lived in other structures. It's amazing to think that they were doing things like farming, hunting, logging, pottery, and weaving, all within this one giant city. Right in the middle of Cahokia, there was this giant mound that was about 100 feet tall, and around it, there was this huge wooden fence. Inside the fence was the city center, which had a big open space called a plaza. Archaeologists think that the plaza was designed to represent the 4 cardinal directions of the world. It was like the people who built it wanted to create a place that was in harmony with the universe. The center of the city was where they held ceremonies and events, and it was such a big deal that people from outside Cahokia would come to be a part of them too. What became of this city? Hard to tell. Some people think that the reason it fell apart is that they cut down too many trees and the land got all messed up. Other scientists believe that's not true because the soil was still in pretty good shape after the city was gone. The Europeans were not even around at that time, so they couldn't have influenced the downfall of Cahokia either. There's also one theory that suggests there were fights with other communities that caused the city to collapse. These days, there are over 65 preserved mounds, and you can even climb the steps of the tallest one. The best part is that local authorities are thinking of making it a national park, so you should totally plan to visit before it gets too crowded. Mohenjo-Daro is another lost ancient city that's still surrounded by mystery. Located in modern-day Pakistan, it was a city that flourished during the Bronze Age, and it was extremely advanced for its time. It had things like water systems and fancy architecture that other cities didn't have back then. Despite these features, it's not as well known as other ancient cities, like those in Egypt or Mesopotamia. What's even weirder is that at some point, the city was abandoned, and no one knows why. Archaeologists found the city in 1911, but it took a while for them to realize how important it was. Eventually, they uncovered a lot of really interesting things about the city, like its advanced sanitation system. Excavations uncovered over 700 wells, as well as private baths and a large communal bath. Remarkably, even private homes had toilets, and waste was efficiently disposed of through a citywide sewage system. They also had a lot of trade connections and made some really beautiful objects, like pottery, jewelry, and figurines that were sold all over the region. Despite its amazing culture and knowledge, scientists have yet to figure out why the city was abandoned. Some people think changes in the nearby river might have had something to do with it. The writings that the people of Mohenjo-daro left behind are still a complex code, even for the most skilled specialists, making it even harder to piece together their history. Have you heard of the lost city of Kolmanskop? It used to be a small settlement in the Namib Desert. Legend has it that it got its name from a man named Coleman who got stuck in the local dunes and was never seen again. But that's not the interesting part. In 1908, a railway worker found a shiny stone and showed it to the chief railway foreman, who turned out to be a hobby mineralogist. They discovered it was a diamond, and soon, Kolmanskop became the richest town in Africa and one of the richest places in the world. It had luxurious stone houses, a school, a hospital, and even an ice factory to produce ice for fridges. The hospital had the first X-ray machine in southern Africa, which was supposedly used to check if workers were illegally swallowing diamonds. Its popularity began to decline in the late 1920s when another diamond-rich location was discovered nearby. Most of the inhabitants soon began to flee the city in search of a better life, leaving the buildings abandoned. In 1938, all machinery was taken south and the town was left to the desert. The last inhabitant left Kolmanskop between 1956 and 1960. The hot climate and low humidity have preserved the structures over time, and tourists can now visit this desert ghost town. You've surely heard about this next ancient city, Machu Picchu. It's this incredible ancient location in Peru. It stretches across a huge piece of land in the Andes Mountains and sits high above sea level. It's even considered one of the wonders of the modern world. But here's the thing. Scientists aren't exactly sure what it was used for. It could have supported up to 750 people, but there aren't a lot of human clues left behind. Some people think it was more of a spiritual or ceremonial place, while others believe it may have been like a fancy spa retreat for the nobles. The extensive terraces might mean it was used for crop testing or as a trading hub. And there's even a theory that it was used as a prison because they found a cell-like area too. It's amazing that even today, archaeologists and historians are still puzzled about how it was built. Did you know that they probably didn't even use wheels for transportation? And those massive granite rocks were somehow pushed up the steep Andean mountains, even though most of them weighed a lot. Some historians think that hundreds of people worked together to push each rock up the peak. The huge stones at Machu Picchu are also so close together that you can't see any cracks between them. It's pretty cool because it also makes the area safe during earthquakes, which is important since Peru is a shaky country. But how did the stones stay put during all those quakes? They actually move a little bit, but then they go back to their original spot, almost like they're dancing. Some people think wet wooden wedges were used to keep them in place, but that doesn't really add up, considering how big the structures are. Locals back then also seem to have built Machu Picchu without using any pack animals or iron tools. They had to sculpt and put everything together using mostly their hands. Plus, the citadel is built on a fault, so they had to move a bunch of stone and earth to make it flat. Scientists also think that the real construction is actually underground because of the deep foundations and drainage system. In fact, there's a hidden water system that was just recently discovered using 3D scanning. They didn't even use mortar to put the granite blocks together. They were so precise that you can't even fit a sheet of paper between them. One theory suggests that people that lived there used stone tools made of a harder material than the stone they were cutting.
Scientists have recently discovered Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages under a medieval castle in Italy. They followed a newly found 15th century sketch by the creator of the Mona Lisa and found one of the unexplored architectural wonders from the age of the Renaissance. Construction of the Sforza Castle started back in 1358, but it was destroyed about a century later during a local crisis. Then, in 1450, Francesco Sforza, the Duke of Milan, decided to rebuild it on the old ruins. After he passed away, his son Ludovico took over and kept improving the castle. He brought in some of the best artists of the time, including Leonardo da Vinci, to decorate its walls. We can still see Leonardo's frescoes today in the Room of Wooden Boards. While he was working at the castle, da Vinci also recorded some historical underground passages hidden beneath the outer wall. The drawing, dated between 1487 and 1490, was found at the Institut de France in Paris. The sketch is highly precise, and it proves that Leonardo was really interested in fortification design and was great at documenting existing structures. Historical records show that Ludovico ordered the building of an underground passageway that led straight to a basilica, where his wife was buried. Ludovico married Beatrice in 1491, and they had a happy but tragically short marriage, as Beatrice passed away while giving birth in 1497. The Duke locked himself away for weeks, grew a beard, and wore only black clothes while he was mourning his beloved wife. The secret tunnel may have stretched over a half a mile and would let Ludovico visit her grave in private. It could have served as an escape route if the castle was ever under siege. The existence of the tunnels remained one of the mysteries of the Renaissance for years, as no one knew for sure they were there. But now, scientists finally uncovered the secret history. They used a combination of ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning to build up an accurate 3D model of all the structures under the castle. They found the tunnels da Vinci alluded to in his drawings, and it looks like they may have only been a small part of a whole system of historical underground passages. The goal is to create a complete digital twin of the castle that will not only show all the preserved constructions, but also the ancient ones that are no longer visible. They also plan to add augmented reality to the virtual paths to let visitors discover Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages. Now, we don't know if the genius actually took part in constructing the hidden passages that scientists recently discovered, but we do know about some other Leonardo da Vinci inventions. He created the first satellite-like map in 1502, long before photography or satellites were even a concept. A famous figure in Italy, Cesare Borgia, invited Leonardo to a small town called Imola, near Bologna, to create a highly detailed map for him. Back then, maps were not very precise, as no one had figured out how to show exact distances on a smaller scale. Instead, people spent a lot of time decorating them with dragons, roses, fancy castles, mountain ranges, flowers, and other artistic details. These maps look more like beautiful paintings meant to be displayed, rather than practical tools for navigation. But Cesare Borgia wanted something truly functional, and Leonardo managed to create something revolutionary in the field of cartography. If you compare satellite images of Imola today with Leonardo's map, the similarities are striking. He captured every alley, curve of the streets, roadways, and even the exact sizes of the buildings. And he did it all by hand. using just a pencil, ruler, compass, and several of his own clever inventions. To gather all the necessary data, the genius walked through the streets for weeks using a large wheel that spun as he moved, recording the distance with a cable. Using the magnetic compass, he determined precise directions. He also developed a tool called the bussola, which measured angles inside a circle. With this, he could track the exact turns of each street and the size of the intersections. He figured out the distances between houses and major roads. Then, back at home, he used his notes and calculations to draw the map to scale with incredible precision. In his work, Da Vinci also used a technique developed by Florentine humanist Leon Battista Alberti. He created a mapping method where you could place an entire city inside a circle using polar coordinates. At the center of the city, 8 straight lines met, representing the main directions of a compass. Leonardo used this system to divide the town into 8 sections. He didn't overlook even the smallest buildings, which made his map one of the most advanced of its time. The Italian genius had a big dream to build a machine that could let people fly. He studied how birds, bats, and kites move through the air and designed a special flying machine. He believed that if he could copy their movements, humans might be able to soar like them. Da Vinci's design looked a lot like a bat, with 2 large pointed wings that stretched over 33 feet wide. He planned to build the frame from lightweight pine wood and cover it with raw silk to make it strong but not too heavy. The person flying it would lie on their stomach on a wooden board in the center. To make the wings flap, the pilot had to pedal a crank with their feet, which was connected to a system of rods and pulleys. There was also a hand crank for extra power and even a headpiece to help steer. As the person moved their hands and feet, the wings would flap and twist, just like a bird's. But there was one big problem. Humans aren't strong enough to make the machine lift off the ground. Even though it might have worked once in the air, there was no way for a person to get it flying on their own. Leonardo probably realized this, but his amazing idea still inspired flying machines that came centuries later. Da Vinci was way ahead of his time with many of his inventions, but his idea for a humanoid robot was especially futuristic. He was working under the patronage of the Sforza family, the one that had those ancient tunnels of Italy built. The genius designed a mechanical knight that could move its arms, turn its neck, and even open and close its mouth. Da Vinci had good knowledge of anatomy and the mechanics of body movements that helped him. His unusual creation used an external system of cables. A hand crank set it in motion, and there was also an internal gear-driven mechanism. About 450 years later, Da Vinci's detailed sketches of the robotic knight were rediscovered in the 1950s. Several researchers tried to recreate the robot from those sketches. In 2002, a roboticist who developed systems for NASA and Lockheed Martin took inspiration from the old notes and built a functioning model of Da Vinci's robotic knight. Another design Leonardo created for Duke Sforza was a special kind of bridge that could be taken apart and carried easily. It was made for defense forces who needed to cross rivers or moats while traveling. This bridge would swing across the water and land on the other side. It had wheels and used a rope and pulley system, so it could be set up quickly and packed away just as fast. To keep it steady, it even had a special weight to help balance it. Leonardo wrote in his notes that the bridge was light yet strong, and he designed several bridges like this for the Duke. One of his other designs was a bridge that could be built very quickly, and the defense forces would move across multiple rivers. As scientists continue to study Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages, they reveal new chapters in human history. Who knows what other unexplored architectural structures they will find? Stonehenge took approximately 20 million man-hours to build. For comparison, an average human doesn't live much over 700,000 hours. This is Jack, one of the first builders of Stonehenge. Let's say Jack lived to be 80 years old, which is extremely improbable, but it makes it easier for me to crunch the numbers, thanks. If Jack had spent his entire life, from age 0 to age 80, working on the Stonehenge project, it would have required approximately 28.5 generations of people doing the same thing to complete it. That's next to impossible. To make it more plausible, let's multiply that by 2. After all, Jack wouldn't want to dedicate his entire life to moving stones, and he didn't live to be that old. Thus, we arrive at around 57 generations needed to build Stonehenge. That's not enough room on the screen for me to introduce John, Jack's great-great-great-great, you get the drift, grandson. So it all began around 5,000 years ago with just a simple circular earthen bank and ditch. Fast forward to around 26,000 BCE, and the builders replaced that initial structure with a complex arrangement of wooden posts and brought in around 80 dolerite bloom stones from Wales, which were rearranged at least 3 times. Then, a few hundred years later, they added those massive sarsen stones, each weighing around 25 tons. These enormous sandstone blocks were transported about 19 miles to create a continuous outer circle, with 5 trilithons, 2 upright stones topped with a lintel, forming a horseshoe shape inside. It was a millennium-long building process that demanded years of hard work. So, people must have lived nearby, right? But how would they have found shelter back then? Today, we have houses for builders on site, small accommodations that serve as temporary housing. But structures like this definitely didn't exist when Stonehenge was constructed, did they? Well, actually, they existed, and some recent archaeological digs near Stonehenge prove it. Archaeologists found this Stone Age eco-home, which is a huge deal since it's one of the earliest settlements in the area. This newly uncovered Mesolithic home dates back to around the year 4300 BCE. Let's take a closer look at this house, shall we? Now, for the walls, people back then used a large fallen tree, its trunk to be more precise. These wooden walls were reinforced with flint, and they even lined the pit left by the uprooted tree with cobblestones. To create the roof, they opted for animal hides, which sounds like a wise choice. They must have provided protection against the unpredictable weather of the British Isles. Now, you might be wondering, the weather in Britain is indeed unpredictable, and it has been that way since time immemorial. So, how did the builders manage throughout most of the year, particularly during the winter months? Well, the answer is simple. There was a hearth on site, which isn't surprising, but the system they employed was quite ingenious. A hearth inside the house would have posed too great a risk, yet bringing hot stones into the dwelling was perfectly safe. While they were hot, they couldn't ignite the building. So they used these stones from the hearth as a heat storage system to keep warm at night. And as a final touch, they even incorporated various stones for decoration. They didn't exactly get a Pinterest house, but it added a touch of elegance for sure. And if you think this discovery is merely about the houses, think again. It significantly changes our understanding of how people lived during that time. This discovery places them in an important prehistoric setting right at the start of the Neolithic area, sparking some interesting questions about whether these early folks could be related to the people who built Stonehenge. But there's a big worry. Experts are concerned that this significant find, along with other buried archaeological sites, could be at risk if the authorities go ahead with plans to build a tunnel to reroute the A303 away from the World Heritage Site. Sure thing the house the scientists found wasn't in perfect shape, and it lacked some crucial elements people use for living. Some of them decayed over time, while others were simply absent. So the scientists took 20 tons of chalk, 5,000 hazel rods, and 3 tons of straw, and used all this to recreate the 4,500-year-old design houses. These new buildings are located close to Stonehenge, which is incredible since in this area, planning permission for even a new cowshed is problematic. So, what are these houses like? Well, first off, there are 4 of them, and they're oval-shaped. They're built on the foundation of real houses that stood there about 4,500 years ago, just around the time the Stonehenge Eco House was going up. The houses aren't very big, they're single-room structures. When it comes to dimensions, it was straightforward to estimate since we could gauge the size of the roof and the height of the walls based on the foundations. Each side measures about 16 feet. However, the roof structure remains a bit of a mystery. There were a few differing thatching techniques back then, so pinpointing the exact method used for these dwellings is kind of a guessing game. For now, we think it involves knotted or tied straw carefully secured onto a hazel-woven frame. When fires are lit, the smoke from the hearth wafts up through the thatched roof. Now, remember those 20 tons of chalk? That was needed for the floors and walls. The white chalk walls and floors reflect sunlight and capture heat from the fire. But here's the kicker. The builders encountered a challenge because the ground was so waterlogged that some of the chalk floors took weeks to dry out. By the time they should have been bone dry, they were still as sticky as chewing gum. Now, it's safe to say people 4,500 years ago faced similar struggles, and we can really appreciate what they went through while building their homes. The final layer of daub was applied using rags, giving a smooth, almost shiny finish that looks surprisingly classy. The interiors are furnished with wooden and wicker beds and shelves, along with clay pots and jars, all centered around a cozy hearth. The spaces feel surprisingly roomy and are filled with light that streams in through the thatched roof, bouncing off those white walls. Plus, the woven furniture adds a nice touch of authenticity to the vibe. The fires have been lit, and the first meal, bread crafted from flour ground on a stone mill next to the hearth, has been prepared. Those who tried the bread were pleasantly surprised by its flavor, finding it quite tasty. Now, here comes the bummer. Those who recreated the houses did cheat a little. While the materials used were authentic, the tools weren't. They used cement mixers to mix the daub, wheelbarrows to transport the timber, and logs by the hearth were split with steel axes instead of stone ones. Still, the builders aren't professionals, they're volunteers. So I think a bit of cheating is totally cool in this case. There are other volunteers on site who are more than happy to chat about the daily activities of the Stonehenge builders, from grinding grain with a quern to making rope from rushes. But these houses and the Eco House aren't the only remarkable things in the Stonehenge area. Some years ago, archaeologists uncovered a burial site close to Stonehenge that predates the monument itself. This Neolithic long barrow, dating back approximately 56 to 5,700 years, likely contains the remains of some of Britain's earliest inhabitants. The burial site was identified through aerial images that revealed its distinct shape beneath the crops. Salisbury Plain is rich with ancient sites, including Stonehenge, various mounds, and monuments. The area has remained undisturbed over the centuries, which is likely why so many ancient structures are still intact. This discovery also shows a significant shift in human lifestyle during that era, marking a transition from a nomadic existence to settled farming and animal husbandry, much like the Eco House itself. The long barrow in question measures about 85 feet long and 65 feet wide, though much of its above-ground structure has been lost to farming over the years. If this site is like others in the vicinity, it contains the remains of 30 to 50 individuals, along with cow skulls, which were significant to those early communities.
You've just reached your perfect spot on a deserted beach. It's so quiet here that you start to doze off. But as you open your eyes, you're shocked. Wait a minute, is that an actual house that's just been washed up on the shore? It may sound like the beginning of a sci-fi novel, but not if you live near this beach in El Salvador. There's a mysteriously abandoned house there that looks as if it's just been washed ashore. How did this villa end up there? How long has it been here without anyone noticing it? This mysterious construction is 46 miles south of El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. Locals say the building used to be a hotel called Puerto Ventura. At the time it was built, its main attraction was the fact that it was really close to the sea. Unfortunately, the engineering behind it wasn't well planned out, all because locals didn't need any official permission to start the construction. The hotel was too close to the water and dangerously exposed to the elements. The Roman-style villa is now a mere 50 feet from the edge of the sea when the tide is low. It can only be accessed in the morning because later, the tides fill the first floor with salt water. What's now left of the hotel looks like the ruins of a two-story house. The front part is very impressive, with Roman-type pillars. It also has wide windows on the second floor. You can still see parts of the iron structures and remains of what used to be the gateway to the second floor. There are some bleachers at the top of the building. They're sometimes used by tourists. More and more people are now browsing the area, taking photos, even though the building is obviously not safe for climbing. There's little information on how long it's been sitting in its current location, but some locals say it's been there for at least 20 years. It had remained a local secret for years before it was discovered by a TikTok user in 2021. But that doesn't answer the question. How did the hotel end up in another location altogether? This is where things become a little fuzzy. While some locals say that the building was abandoned decades ago, others claim it was deserted after Hurricane Mitch hit the area back in 1998. Hurricane Mitch was one of the most dangerous weather phenomena to ever hit Central America. During the storm, the winds traveled at 178 miles per hour, and the hurricane itself lasted for about 15 hours. It was also the cause of a huge amount of rainfall, which resulted in floods and many dangerous landslides. Being built so close to the shoreline, the former hotel had little chance of surviving the extreme weather conditions, so it must have been literally displaced. After sitting under the sun, you might start dreaming of some snowballs getting washed ashore. To even out the temperature. I'm not kidding. This strange natural phenomenon did happen back in 2016. It resulted in about 11 miles of the coast of the Gulf of Aab in West Siberia getting covered with huge snowballs. Because of the low temperatures, small pieces of ice started to form in the water. Afterward, the wind and waves rolled them into giant snowballs. Some of them were the size of a tennis ball, but others were up to 3 feet wide. A 2004 Harley-Davidson night train motorcycle popped up ashore on a British Columbia beach back in 2012. It was neatly packed inside a shipping container. It took some time to do it, but the owner was eventually traced down. His name was Ikuyo Yokoyama, and he lost his motorcycle after a tsunami struck Japan on March 11, 2011. To get to its final destination, the Harley-Davidson traveled more than 4,000 miles. To celebrate its long journey, Yokoyama donated the bike to the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee. It's been on display there ever since, in case you want to visit. This strange phenomenon made it look as if someone spilled dish soap all over the beach. But it does happen pretty often in Queensland. Sea foam covers the shore there a couple of times each year. It mostly happens after a storm, when ocean waves move dissolved organic matter around. It's basically like a giant ice cream maker. After Cyclone Debbie back in March of 2017, some beaches actually needed to be closed because of huge amounts of white foam. The wind even brought some of that foam to the nearby towns, making locals believe it was snowing. Would you be surprised to see a 6-by-6-foot rusty metal die washed ashore on your local beach? Because back in 2017, people in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho sure were. It turned out to be an old storage tank. Someone decided to spice it up a bit by adding some white spots to make it look like a die. In 1992, thousands of rubber duckies got stranded at sea after a large container ship that was transporting them was hit by a wave. As you can imagine, the ducks started popping up all over the world, in Hawaii, Alaska, South America, Australia, in Europe, and even in the Arctic. It's estimated that a couple hundred of those unlucky rubber ducks are still out there. Interestingly, they turned out to be very useful to scientists. Based on their movements, researchers can monitor the direction of water currents. If you happen to like dinosaurs, you'll be happy to know sea waters can also bring ashore some fossils. In 2018, a large dinosaur jawbone ended up on the coast of Lilstock Beach in Somerset, England. It used to belong to a dinosaur called Ichthyosaurus. Thanks to this finding, scientists were able to make an impressive discovery. Before, they thought the Ichthyosaurus could reach a maximum length of about 69 feet. But after they studied the jawbone, they ended up recalculating the creature's size. They concluded that the Ichthyosaurus could grow up to 85 feet. The megalodon was the largest predator in our planet's history. It lived almost all over the globe, except near the poles. How do we know that? Because megalodon teeth keep appearing on beaches every now and then. One staggering megalodon tooth, which was way over 20 inches long, was discovered in a river in Croatia. Since these creatures have been extinct for about 3 million years, Their teeth are highly prized by fossil hunters. A giant Lego man that washed ashore is something I never thought I'd hear about. And it turns out it didn't happen just once. There were 4 of these giant Lego men in total, each around 8 feet tall. One was found in England and one in the Netherlands, while the other 2 popped up in Florida and California. It was surely not a coincidence, and after some research, people found out that a Dutch artist was behind this. Ego Leonard started this project as a personal statement campaign. A short film was even made about this, and it was called No Real Than You Are. This sentence was written on each of the 4 Lego men put to sea. A bundle of over 50 letters was washed ashore in New Jersey on a beach in Atlantic Highlands back in 2012. It happened shortly after Hurricane Sandy had struck the area. A 14-year-old boy found the letters and gave them to his mom. She was so touched by them that she decided to carefully dry and return them to their owner. The letters were the correspondence of 2 people named Dorothy and Lynn. They were dated between 1942 and 1948. The last was written a week before their wedding. With the help of an online genealogy site, the woman reached Dorothy and returned the letters to the 88-year-old woman who was living in a retirement home.
Tartesos, a mysterious, highly developed society that once flourished and then, without any warning, suddenly disappeared. Moreover, before they were completely gone, they performed some strange rituals, as if they were trying to save themselves from something. But what happened to these people? Let's try to find out. Let's go to the southwest of Spain, to about 2,500 years ago. Once, there was a beautiful city here, a trade center of Tartesos. Imagine the temple in the middle of a deserted town. A breathtaking, monumental 2-story building. There's a thick smell of frying meat in the air, and the smoke from its frying rises high into the sky, covering the patterns of the sanctuary. The sun has already set, and it's time to prepare for the ritual. We enter the ancient monumental hall. Inside, hundreds of people gather around a long wooden table lined with delicate ceramics and bronze bowls. They feast and drink. These people have much more fun than the animals outside the building. These animals are being prepared for the ritual. Horses, cows, pigs, donkeys, even dogs. All of them were brought here to appease the deities. And what happens after the ritual itself is even crazier. At the end of the ceremony, people take torches and set fire to the whole building. Everything turns to ashes and coals. And when the last embers fade away, they take shovels and begin to bury this place. It will take them at least several days to bury the former sanctuary under piles of earth. They work tirelessly. In some places, the thickness of the layers of mud and clay will reach almost 14 feet. And then these people, the last known Tartessians, just leave this place and disappear from our world forever. But what just happened? Why did they even do all this? Let's start from the beginning. Tartesos was first mentioned in Greek and Roman texts thousands of years ago, but for a long time, we had no idea what it even was. All the descriptions were contradictory and confusing. Some archaeologists thought that Tartesos was a kind of seaport. Others thought that it was a river or a water reservoir. They even said this place could be connected with the mystical Atlantis. But there was nothing to back it up with, so the scientific community quickly rejected this idea. But today, we know the truth. Tartesos was an ancient civilization. It's been located on the Iberian Peninsula, one of the southernmost islands of Europe. It flourished in the 9th to 5th centuries BC, and then, around 2,500 years ago, suddenly disappeared. They were quite rich. The island had rich reserves of metal, so their economy was thriving. Silver, copper, lead, and other good things were mined in the local Sierra Morena mountains. Almost all the locals were engaged in trade. For them, it was a common thing. Isn't that strange that there were so few records left about them? And not so many monuments of their culture have survived to this day. In total, throughout Spain, scientists were able to collect around 20 archaeological finds related to Tartesos. 3 of them were excavated in the Guadiana Valley: Canto Roano, Casas del Turrunuelo, and La Mata. Let's start with the first one. Canto Roano was discovered in 1978. This find was one of the most significant pieces of the puzzle. This is one of the most beautifully preserved structures of the Tartessian civilization. Not only the walls have survived to this day, but so did the altar, the moat, and even several artifacts. For example, some jewelry and wine glasses. It was a square building surrounded by a deep moat filled with water. And, to be honest, we still don't know its exact purpose. We only assume that it could be an ancient temple. Some rituals were carried out there. For instance, they would set fire to the temple and cover it with thick layers of sand and clay. They even left some expensive artifacts inside: tools, gold jewelry, and so on. Moving on to the next find. Casas del Turrunuelo is one of the best preserved buildings in the entire Western Mediterranean. We only discovered it a couple of years ago, back in 2015. And it hasn't been studied that well yet, but we already know that this place is also pretty weird. Casas del Turrunuelo was a very rich building. It wasn't just some kind of temporary camp. It was a place of monumental, impressive architecture. Massive staircases, vaulted ceilings, luxurious materials brought from all over the Mediterranean, and the latest construction technologies. It was supposed to be a place of power, maybe even something like a palace. And yep, it also became the venue for the rituals. It's unclear whether the locals intended to destroy this beautiful place from the very beginning, but this is where they performed the greatest ritual in the area. This ritual involved more than 50 animals, including the most valuable ones, horses. It was their only means of transportation. The fact that these people gave away their horses may indicate that they planned to stay here for some time. Perhaps they hoped to appease the deities and settle on local lands. The ritual was carried out exactly as they intended. And just like Canto Roano, this place was also set on fire. When the ritual ended, the locals buried this place and left, disappearing into the countryside of the Iberian Peninsula. Now it's an abandoned and quiet place. Just like Canto Roano, it's been standing here untouched for more than 2,000 years. The last find is La Mata, which was discovered much earlier than the other two, back in 1930. The resemblance between all of them was striking. La Mata had the same fate. It was burned and forgotten for centuries. All of this is very strange and mysterious. It seems like the locals were fleeing from something. Perhaps something happened that made them start building these banquet halls and arranging large-scale rituals. They thought that their deities turned away from them and tried to appease them. But unfortunately, it didn't work. As a result, they were forced to leave their temples and soon disappeared altogether forever. And by the way, why did they disappear at all? Well, this is another mystery of this civilization. One of the most important questions is, did they know that they were going to disappear? Or was it something unexpected? Did they suffer some kind of sudden catastrophe from which they were trying to escape? Or something else? Scientists have several theories on this. The first theory says that there may have been several major earthquakes and subsequent tsunamis in this region. These natural disasters destroyed local settlements and severely demoralized the survivors. Perhaps they were looking for salvation from this. Another theory is that there were some problems with trading. Since they were rich in metal and lived off their economy, any problems in it could lead to big troubles. If they had some kind of mining crisis, then relations between different nations could worsen greatly, and things could get pretty nasty. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. The most current theory says that around the 6th century BC, a large-scale tsunami hit the port. This greatly damaged the economy, which worsened the relationship between Tartesos and its neighbors. In any case, this seems to be speculation. This place is like a dream come true for archaeologists. It stores a huge amount of information and secrets that we have yet to unravel. The Tartessians had no idea that by burying their artifacts, they were making a real gift to the scientists of the future. And while scientists continue to study them, we can check out the stuff they have already discovered. History lovers can see Tartessian tools, horse figurines, and decorated ivory in the Archaeological Museum of Badajoz. Let's hope that in the future, scientists will learn more interesting things about this civilization, and we'll finally find out what happened to them.
This hidden village is called Aogashima. It's located right in the middle of a volcanic crater. You can find it to the south of Japan, in northernmost Micronesia. The story goes that a volcano erupted in the Philippine Sea in the 1780s, causing a lot of harm to a nearby community. Half of the population managed to escape the massive eruption and came back years later to rebuild their village. At the moment, about 160 people are living there peacefully, even though the volcano is still considered to be active. Huacachina in Peru lies in one of the driest climates in the world, and still, it's a beautiful town, surrounded by lush palm trees. It also has a lagoon, which is said to have special healing properties. The settlement has a little over 90 residents that manage small businesses. Most of them use sand as their primary resource. Some offer sandboarding services or even provide luxury dinners in the desert. For over 500 years, a small group of people has been living on a cliffside of a peak called the Green Mountain. It's one of the most remote places in Oman and in the whole world. The only way to reach the settlement is on foot, by mule, or by all-terrain vehicle. It's called Al Sogara, and you need to hike around 20 minutes up a steep stone staircase to get there. The village appeared back when the locals chiseled their houses into the mountain stone to protect themselves from storms and the cold. 5 families of the Al-Sharaki tribe still call this place home, about 25 people in total. A lot of other villages like this one can be found in the region, but Al Sogara is special because it's the only one that is still inhabited. Up until 14 years ago, there wasn't even electricity or telephone lines here. The nearest road you could drive on was 9 miles away. Since there were no schools, people had to learn how to read and write at home from their elders. To this day, the villagers continue their traditional practice of building their homes by carving them directly into the mountain rock. One of the most beautiful Greek gems is Monemvasia, a castle town located in southeastern Peloponnese. It was designed to be invisible from the mainland for added protection. You can only see it from the sea, and to reach it, you need to follow a narrow pathway that connects it to the mainland. That's actually how its name came into being. It translates to a single passage. Monemvasia was built in the Middle Ages, exclusively carved in the mountain rock. These days, a lot of old mansions have been turned into guest houses and boutique hotels. Not only is the architecture amazing and beautifully preserved, but it's also surrounded by crystal clear waters. A town with no roads? Pack your bags for Giethoorn in the Netherlands, if you don't mind traveling by boat. The town is very peaceful, probably because everyone here travels by canals. Even the mail gets delivered by water. Since there's no car traffic and people rarely move around, the town is really quiet. So quiet that the loudest sound one can hear is the quacking of a duck every now and then. It initially started as a movie set, but Hobbiton in New Zealand still exists, even after the filming of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit was finished. Tours to the charming set town are now available. There are 44 Hobbit holes in total, though only a few of them are actually open to the public. The isolated cliffside village of Gasadalar in the Faroe Islands has a population of only 11 people. It's mostly known for its scenic waterfall, which falls directly into the Atlantic Ocean. You could only reach it on foot, hiking through the mountains not so long ago. However, a tunnel has been constructed recently, making the place easily accessible by car. The 1980s musical Popeye had a custom set built on Malta. It wasn't taken down after the filming had been finished. And Popeye Village is now home to groups of beautifully colored wooden buildings and a company of actors. There's a lot of fun stuff to do there, like watch theater shows, go on boat rides, visit museums, or simply explore the creative village. The oldest and most photographed village in Austria is called Hallstatt. It's a hidden European gem with beautifully preserved old buildings and a subterranean salt lake. It's also home to a museum with artifacts as old as 7,000 years and the world's oldest salt mine. Fort Bourtange in the Netherlands is a small establishment shaped like a star. Creative parts aside, it was built this way for defensive purposes. It gave the guards of the fort a strategic advantage because they had a perfect 360-degree view. These days, the construction is perfectly preserved, including its old buildings, cobblestone streets, wooden windmills, and sophisticated bridges. In Morocco, there's a traditional earthen village made entirely from clay bricks. You can find it in a valley close to the Atlas Mountains, 32 miles from the capital of Morocco. Merchants who followed the trans-Saharan trade route went through this town, carrying spices and gold. As the trade route became less and less popular, many of these fortresses were abandoned and are now preserved relics. It's one of the best places for skiing in the world, but it's still hidden from the public. No wonder the locals call it the secret side of the valley. Located in Austria, the tiny village of Barth has only a couple hundred inhabitants. Not only is it the snowiest village on Earth, but it also has access to one of the biggest ski slopes in the world. Its popularity increased a bit in 2013 when the construction of a high-speed road was completed nearby. Virano in Italy is one of the most colorful islands in the world. Because of its vibrant colors, it almost looks tropical. It features emerald green waters, beautiful houses, and a 17th century bell tower. Its lace-making tradition brought Leonardo da Vinci to the island back in the 1400s. He bought a piece of cloth there and later used it for the design of the famous Dome of Milan. If you have a UK passport, you must be familiar with the beautiful small town of Bibury, as its scenery is featured in your ID. It's surely one of the most charming towns in Europe, as it's made up of stone buildings standing on the River Colne. The image in the UK passports is that of Arlington Row, a line of weavers' cottages that date back to the 14th century. The town of Coober Pedy in Australia is partially underground. It all began back in 1915, when opal deposits were found in the area. To this day, the town is still the biggest opal mine in the world. People living there figured out that it would be more comfortable for them to stick to the underground, as the temperatures outside can reach 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So, the settlement now has underground stores and galleries. Coober Pedy is also home to the world's first 4-star underground hotel. To visit the most remote location in the whole world, you'll need to prepare yourself for quite a journey. If you're traveling from the United States, for example, the easiest route is a 15-hour-long flight to Cape Town, South Africa, followed by a 6-day boat ride. Only after that will you reach Tristan da Cunha. Or you can take a month-long cruise across the South Atlantic Ocean, whatever works better for you. Planning in advance is a must, since there are only 9 boat trips to the island yearly. The island itself is just 7 miles long. Sitting right in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, it covers a mere 37.8 square miles. The 300 residents are all farmers. They have the internet, but it's really slow. As for a phone network or a local newspaper, neither is available. The inhabitants of the island speak a dialect of English that is used by the smallest number of people in the world.
And now we're off to almost 5,000 years ago. Let me take you to ancient Egypt, where back in 2550 BC, guess what? The construction of the Great Pyramids of Giza started. People learned to build cathedrals and skyscrapers, but it wasn't until recently that these massive buildings appeared. It's still a mystery to even modern scientists how these pyramids were built 5,000 years ago. No wonder they are one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. They're also the oldest of them and the only wonder of the ancient world that still exists in the 21st century. It must have taken a lot of cooperation to build a thing that massive, even for today's metrics. But the Giza pyramids weren't the first pyramids ever. The first one, called the Step Pyramid, was built around 80 years before the first pyramid of Giza in 2630 BC for King Djoser. It wasn't meant to be extraordinary, but ended up being quite impressive. It was a pyramid of 6 stepped layers of stone. It was 204 feet high, which is as tall as a 19-story building. And it was the tallest building that existed at that time. It wasn't just a pyramid though, it was surrounded by a whole complex of buildings, including even courtyards. In ancient Egypt, people believed in the afterlife, so everyone, especially kings, wanted to make sure they had everything they needed to get ready for it. Here's why the pyramid complex was perfectly supplied with a lot of objects people used every day. The complex included a pyramid and a kind of a palace. Those buildings had many things the king loved and might need one day, like furniture, food, and gold vessels. After Djoser, building pyramids became common practice, but many pyramids weren't finished. It would usually take about 20 years to build one, but many rulers reigned way less than that. Overall, there are more than 100 pyramids. The most famous pyramids are the Great Pyramids of Giza. The first one and the biggest one was built for Pharaoh Khufu, around 2550 BC. Initially, it was 481 feet tall, which is as tall as a 40-story building. The second pyramid was built for Khufu's son, Pharaoh Khafre, around 2520 BC. It's just a bit shorter, usually standing at 471 feet high, a 39-story building. This is the pyramid with the famous statue of the Sphinx. Sphinxes have a lion's body and a human head. They were built to guard important areas. This one has the head of Pharaoh Khafre and is guarding his pyramid, facing the sunrise. The Sphinx is most well known and is one of the world's biggest and oldest statues. Originally, it had red color and did have a nose. It's still possible to see the trace of red pigment by its ears. But no one knows exactly when the nose disappeared. For some time, the Sphinx was sort of hidden underground, being covered with sand up to its shoulders. Luckily, in the early 1800s, an adventurer with a team of 160 people dug it out. The third pyramid of Giza is the smallest one, being more than twice shorter. Originally, it was 218 feet high, about the height of a 20-story building. Built in 2490 BC, it was a pyramid for Khafre's son, Menkaure. The pyramids are designed to align with the points of the compass, and their sides symbolize the rays of the sun. But back at the time, there were no compasses. Ancient Egyptians figured out the directions themselves, and with amazing precision. To align the pyramids, they used 2 constellations. Originally, the pyramids were covered in smooth white limestone and had a gold-silver top to reflect the sun. Later, the white limestone was taken from the pyramids by other kings and used for other buildings. Scientists estimated that ancient Egyptians used about 2.3 million stone blocks to build the first pyramid. Each block weighed more than 1 ton. This is the weight of a rhino. Some blocks were even bigger, being almost as heavy as an elephant. 4.5 millennium ago, there was no modern equipment to help build it. There were no machines, no wheels, and even no steel. The only metal available to them was copper. Even today, scientists aren't sure how the Egyptians managed to build the pyramids. There are no records left that would shed light on it. Some even think that Egyptians wanted to keep it as their secret and didn't even record it on purpose. Many believe that poor people and foreigners built the pyramids, but it's not true. Actually, the builders were very skilled workers, and they were fed and paid well. The archaeologists claim that the builders lived in a nearby temporary city and were a highly organized community with a strong leader. Scientists say that around 20,000 people worked on each pyramid complex, and it took about 20 years to build each. It probably was a national project. The construction site was large in resources, and food and essentials were likely to be contributed from all parts of Egypt. Even with all that support, it remains unclear how people managed to cut, transport, and assemble those huge stones. One of the theories suggests the stones were most likely transported on boats down the Nile River. Then, there was a harder part, they had to be moved to the construction site. For that, they probably used wooden sleds. It wasn't very hard to pull them because the sand mixed with the right amount of water was pretty slick. And 10 people could move a sled even with a rock weighing 1 ton pretty easily. Finally, one last problem. The stones had to be lifted and put into place. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of the ramps system that dates back to when the pyramids were built. Most likely, the Egyptians designed a unique system to move and pull huge stone blocks, but no one knows what it looked like exactly. The most common opinion is that there were several ramps around the pyramid to help move the blocks. The ramp was growing with the pyramid getting higher. They suppose people were walking up the stairs, pulling the stone on the wooden sled up in the middle on the sandy ramp. But this is just one of the options. Others say that the ramps were going around the pyramid. Some say the ramps were inside the pyramid. But we'll never know for sure, and it'll forever remain a mystery, just like the ancient Egyptians wanted. Surprisingly, there's not much inside the pyramids. Most of it is just solid stone with very little open space. But let's take a quick look inside the biggest of the pyramids of Giza. From the entrance, there are 2 stairs, one going down and the other one going up. The descending one takes you to a chamber located underground. That's where the pharaohs are, but not in this pyramid because Khufu wanted to stay higher. The underground room is partly unfinished. The room with Khufu's sarcophagus is called the King's Chamber. It's upstairs and then through the tall and long Grand Gallery. Below the King's Chamber, there's a room called the Queen's Chamber. There are no queens though, and no one is sure why the room is called this. Unfortunately, none of these have any hieroglyphs on the wall. They're just bare. If you want to see them, you should go to the other rooms that are decorated. Those pieces of art are depictions of ancient Egypt's culture and daily life. The texts allow researchers to study their language and grammar. Sadly, the treasures that once were here in the pyramid are long stolen. From that room, there are several tunnels for an unknown purpose. There are many tunnels and passages inside the pyramids. There are many chambers and shafts and secret ways. Scientists have been sending little robots with cameras there for some decades already. And the robots did discover another chamber a bit upstairs with hieroglyphs on the walls. But even today, much of the pyramids is still unknown, and there's no so-called building plan of the pyramids. Egyptians did create a mystery no one can crack for 4,500 years already. Scientists recently started to X-ray the pyramid to learn what's inside it without entering it and its narrow, mysterious tunnels.
Whenever you hear about ancient ruins, you almost never picture them being suspended somewhere, or just randomly hanging on the branch of a tree, right? In fact, for most of the ancient artifacts we have exposed in museums all over the world, archaeologists did quite an impressive amount of digging. You see, buildings have this funny way of fading away over time if not properly taken care of. Sometimes we need to reuse some building materials, so an older construction may be sacrificed in the process. Other times houses are abandoned, and once they are exposed to the elements on the surface, like rain or sunlight, they don't really stand a chance. Some just simply crumble away due to good old erosion. So the only way a piece of architecture can survive the test of time is if it's somehow gotten buried deep down. Now, how did they end up buried in the first place? Well, it's quite the comedy of errors. Ancient cities had a habit of gradually raising their ground level like a kid adding toppings to their ice cream sundae. You see, these settlements were always busy collecting food and building materials to keep up with their ever-growing population. But hey, who has time to deal with waste and rubbish? It wasn't exactly high on their to-do list back in the day. So when it came to building new houses, ancient civilizations found it much easier to save their sweat and tears by piling up the rubble and constructing right on top. But that's not all. Rivers would also occasionally flood and deposit a layer of sediment on the city floors, further encapsulating those ancient constructions. And in those dry regions like the desert, where the wind likes to show off its sand and dust dance moves, you can bet it was a constant struggle to keep the establishments clean. One hilarious example is the Sphinx, which had its head buried in sand until a group of archaeologists unearthed it in 1817. Some ancient towns eventually got covered up because they were completely abandoned. With less human activity to control their expansion, plant seeds couldn't resist the opportunity and sprouted all over the place. They gobbled up carbon dioxide from the air and grew, adding more and more bulk to the ground. Those cheeky roots even decided to stabilize the soil made from decaying plant matter, creating layers upon layers of earthy goodness. It's like the ultimate DIY project Mother Nature embarked on, with plants as her loyal helpers. The act of digging into the secrets of ancient civilizations is not just about unearthing a lost world. It's also an epic quest to reveal the hidden treasures beneath layers of history. But how do archaeologists know where to dig in the first place? If everything is covered in layers upon layers of sediments, debris, and plant roots, they must have some sort of system they rely on before embarking on a new project, right? For starters, they're not always the ones suggesting an archaeological dig in a certain location. Let me explain. Let's say you're a contractor and you want to build a new fancy apartment complex in your city. Some local legislations have certain requirements before your project can start, though. For instance, before anyone starts building on a piece of land, they might need to bring in specialists to check the soil. These clever folks can be archaeologists, geologists, or paleontologists, and they need to keep an eye on things during development. If any artifacts or ecofacts, fancy word for organic remnants, are discovered, these experts swoop in to excavate and study them. But what about sites that have nothing to do with bulldozers and yellow hats? Archaeologists have more than one trick up their sleeves when it comes to locating ancient hotspots. They dive deep into historic records with a healthy dose of detective work. By sniffing out old documents and maps, they can piece together the puzzle of human activity in a specific area. If a site has been visited before, it's even better. Finding records of past excavations or historical accounts can give archaeologists lots of information on where to continue their treasure hunt. Before archaeologists start swinging their shovels, they engage in a bit of a visual scan mission. Armed with a grid system, they'll stroll around the site, keeping their eyes peeled for any artifacts that might be hiding just beneath the Earth's upper layer. From groundstone tools to historic glass and even ancient garbage dumps, yes, they're all so valuable. These keen-eyed explorers can spot signs of human activity faster than most people. If they stumble upon midden soil, fancy term for a garbage dump, they know for sure that humans once called this place home. Archaeologists don't just rely on their trusty shovels, though. They have an arsenal of gadgets to aid in their search for hidden wonders. Geophysical tools are like their secret weapons. Take the resistivity meter, for example. This clever contraption measures the electrical component of the soil and any buried features or artifacts. A buried wall, for instance, will create a different resistivity reading than the surrounding soil. Magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar work in similar ways, showcasing potential hints of ancient treasures in the soil. And who could forget our trusty old friend, the GPS? It helps archaeologists map out precise locations, like a high-tech treasure map, leading them straight to their pot of gold. Care to virtually visit some of the most important archaeological sites in the world? Well, follow me. In the United Kingdom, for instance, you'll find this interesting place called Stonehenge. It's one of many henges scattered around, but this one really takes the cake. Picture this: massive ancient stones standing tall and proud, arranged in a funky outer ring and an inner horseshoe, with some smaller stones thrown in for good measure. And guess what? These amazing stones have been around for over 5,000 years. Talk about a serious case of rock-solid longevity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. According to local folklore, the legendary wizard Merlin whipped out his magic wand and poof! He teleported these massive stones all the way from Ireland. Apparently, some giants had assembled them there, but Merlin decided they would look much better at their new location. Others think it's just the ruined remains of an old Roman spiritual edifice. These amazing structures were built by our Bronze Age ancestors. With their simple tools and limited tech, they managed to create this monumental masterpiece. Impressive, right? Unfortunately, there's still so much we don't know about this area. Stonehenge's initial purpose remains a mystery to this day. Sure, there are lots of theories, but scientists have yet to agree on the subject. However, we do know that it's perfectly aligned to catch the sunrise during the summer and winter solstices. The ancient city of Pompeii is an equally amazing archaeological site. Picture this: Mount Vesuvius, a notorious troublemaker, decided to throw a volcanic tantrum and completely covered this ancient Roman city. It turned it into a time capsule, located outside present-day Naples in Italy. Fast forward to the year 1748, when a bunch of adventurous explorers stumbled upon Pompeii. Lo and behold, they discovered a treasure trove of well-preserved goodies. Streets, houses, food. Probably a bit stale by then. Blingy jewelry, fancy sculptures, colorful frescoes, everyday household items, and even animal and human remains. It was like an epic archaeological party. From the looks of it, Pompeii had it all. Fancy houses and villas, a massive 20,000-seat arena, cute little artisan shops, hangouts like taverns. And let's not forget the saucy spots like those luxurious bathhouses for some intense pampering. There's also the sanctuary of Apollo, where people used to gather for their daily dose of worship. And of course, the bustling heart of the city, the Forum of Pompeii, where all the cool people used to hang out. And guess what? Pompeii is so cool that it made it to UNESCO's World Heritage List back in 1997. That's like the ultimate Hall of Fame for historical awesomeness. It also includes many other famous buildings and sites, like the Taj Mahal in India and the Acropolis of Athens in Greece.
Hey, check it out. You could technically live in the Eiffel Tower if you don't mind residing in a small apartment. Gustave Eiffel designed the tower to feature a private apartment for himself right at the top of the construction. He left the place all neat and tidy with all the necessary furniture. These days, the apartment is home to two mannequins, that of Eiffel himself and his equally famous friend Thomas Edison. A sneak peek at the apartment is available for tourists who purchase a ticket to the top of the tower. If you ever pass through Trafalgar Square, you'll surely miss London's smallest police station, since it's hidden beneath a lamppost. The reason why it was placed there back in 1926 was to let police officers be close to public rallies. They happen quite a lot in that area. Some even said it used to have a direct phone line to Scotland Yard. It's now used as a cleaning station, so there isn't much to see there apart from some mops. Grand Central Station, one of New York's busiest, has a great hidden activity for travelers. There are tennis courts available in a secret space named the Annex. This area used to host a lot of different things back in the day, from a recording studio to an art gallery. These days, though, the location is known as the Vanderbilt Tennis Club and can be visited by the public. Similar to Mr. Eiffel, producer Samuel Lionel Roxy Roxafel designed a hidden apartment for himself in the Radio City Music Hall in New York City. He also asked for the apartment, now called the Roxy Suite, to be decorated in the Art Deco style. It features 20-foot-high ceilings covered in gold leaf and walls with floor-to-ceiling plush drapes. These days, only Radio City performers and VIP guests can visit the location. You might be able to rent it out too, but they say the prices are very high. Rome's best-known symbol, the Colosseum, has secret tunnels hidden beneath its grounds. Back in the day, ancient Romans used these passageways to keep wild animals, like lions, tigers, elephants, and bears, as they were used for gladiator fights and other types of entertainment. They've been open for visitors since 2010, along with the Colosseum's plumbing system. It was quite the technological advancement for the time, featuring drinking fountains and even toilets. There are some people that have criticized the opening of these secret tunnels. They believe it might affect the building's structure, given the huge traffic of visitors. The Empire State Building is said to have 102 floors, but that's not true. It actually has a secret 103rd floor. The way to access it is through a hidden staircase located on the 102nd floor, but it's mostly available for the building's engineers and celebrities from time to time. That's not all. The 103rd floor leads to the Empire State Building's capsule. It's the building's famous dome. One of the most famous American landmarks features a mysterious hidden chamber. If current records are true, there's a secret room behind Abraham Lincoln's head from Mount Rushmore. It was meant to keep relative artifacts and documents of American history, like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. We now know these important documents are kept in another location, and the Mount Rushmore room remains inaccessible to the public to this day. Like maybe it's a video game room for park rangers. Or not. Completed between 2550 and 2490 BCE, the Great Pyramid of Giza is the last remaining of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Constructed as a resting place for the 4th dynasty Egyptian pharaoh Khufu, It was thought to feature the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, and the Queen's Chamber. But that's not all, as recently a secret room was discovered here. Dubbed the Big Void, kind of like my head, this huge space is nearly 100 feet long. Its main purpose is still up for debate, but some archaeologists believe it was used as an internal ramp to help build the massive structure. Cinderella Castle is the main attraction of Disney World in Orlando, Florida, in an area called the Magic Kingdom. It does have a hidden room of its own, dubbed the Cinderella Suite. The suite was originally intended to host Walt Disney himself and his family. He passed away in 1966, and he never got to see the final result. It was finally finished in 2006, and ever since, it's only been open a limited number of times and only for visitors invited by the Disney company. Grand Central isn't the only station with hidden features. Italy has its own Milano Centrale, the country's second-largest railway station. More than 320,000 passengers pass by these walls every day. But most of them never notice the closed doors on the side wall of the station leading to the Royal Pavilion, a fashionable area designed as a waiting room for the royal family. The pavilion features two grand halls divided into two floors with luxurious furniture, styled marble, all decorated with royal sculptures. Now, even the Statue of Liberty has a hidden room. Try to guess where it is? It's in the torch of the statue. Now, unfortunately, it's not available to the public ever since it was completely closed back in 1916. A camera was placed here back in 2011 to allow people to enjoy live streaming of the panoramic view. A statue of Leonardo da Vinci, located at Rome's Da Vinci Airport, was first unveiled back in 1960. It recently went under renovation. One of the workers made a mysterious discovery during this process: a small hole somewhere in the middle of the statue at about 30 feet. When it was carefully opened, two parchments were found inside. Written in classical Latin, the first document told the story of the area that now houses the airport. The other one provided a list of people who attended the inauguration of the statue. The U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. has a secret sports facility where clerks, off-duty police officers, and other Supreme Court employees can play basketball. The court, located on the top floor of the building, is obviously dubbed the highest court in the land. Excuse me while I dribble. Disneyland's Club 33 is located in the New Orleans Square section of the theme park in Anaheim, California. This exclusive club houses only 500 members, and it was inaugurated in 1967. It aimed to entertain celebrities, politicians, and sponsors. The decorations were courtesy of Walt Disney himself and his wife. Services here come at a hefty price. Members have to pay $25,000 to join the club, and later a yearly fee of between $12,000 to $25,000. The entrance to the club was easy to miss, since it was hidden behind a doorway with a single gold plate that had the number 33 engraved on it. A makeover of the club took place in 2014. They moved the entrance to an even more secret location, but people can still see the old one in its original place. The New York City public libraries have hidden apartments too. Employees and their families could stay in those hidden rooms that are placed above many of the public libraries. Most of them are either closets or empty rooms these days, but some of them are available to the public, like those belonging to the $4.4 million renovation project of the apartment in the Washington Heights branch. It was transformed from an old, dusty, 3,750 square foot space into a dedicated teen area and tech center that also features rooms for adult education programs. Cool!
Before we get into the reason why and how there are pyramids all around the world, let's talk about some of the examples. I'll start with the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. These folks really knew how to build a city. Their well-planned urban center spanned over 7 square miles and boasted several pyramids. But the Pyramid of the Sun is the most impressive. This giant pyramid was built way back in 100 CE and is one of the biggest structures of its kind in the whole Western Hemisphere. It's so big that it's 216 feet high above the ground. If you ever find yourself in this ancient city, you won't be able to miss the Pyramid of the Sun. It's right there on the east side of the Avenue of the Dead, the city's main north-south street. To build this incredible pyramid, around 1 million cubic yards of material were used, including a special kind of red volcanic rock called hued tezontle. Impressive, huh? We don't know too much about the people who built the Pyramid of the Sun or its purpose. But archaeologists believe there was once a temple on top of it. When explorers went below the pyramid in the 1970s, they found a bunch of cool tunnels and chambers. In 2011, they even found a secret stash of clay pots, obsidian pieces, animal bones, human figurines, and a mask. Who knows what other secrets the pyramid is hiding? If you decide to see this one, you must climb the pyramid using the 248 uneven steps on the west side. Watch your step. Sudan got some pyramids too. Nubian pyramids aren't as big as the ones in Egypt, but they still got around 200 of them. These ancient pyramids have been home to the tombs of the pharaohs of the Meroitic kingdom for almost 1,000 years, who ruled Egypt from Nubia to the Mediterranean Sea. The pyramids at Meroe were constructed using granite and reddish sandstone. Oh, and did you know that Sudan has more ancient pyramids than Egypt? The Kushite pyramids depict the indigenous architecture and burial traditions of Nubia's Napata and Meroe kingdoms, which ancient Egypt influenced. Meroe, the burial site of over 40 queens and kings, is the most extensive Nubian pyramid site. The tomb walls depict mummified royals bedecked in jewelry, their wooden caskets containing bows, quivers of arrows, and other artifacts pointing to the Meroitic relationship and trade with Egyptian and Greek civilizations. So if you're looking for some ancient tombs to explore, you may consider skipping the crowds in Egypt and heading on down to Sudan. Let's fly to Iraq to see some more pyramids. Ziggurats have fancy receding layers and tiered temples. Instead of a smooth exterior, it has tiers like a cake. Perfect for all the important work and rituals that went on inside. You can find these towering structures scattered throughout Iraq and Iran, and they're a real testament to the power and skills of the people who built them. One of the biggest and most impressive ziggurats is the ziggurat at Ur. It's basically a giant rectangular pyramid that stands a whopping 70 to 100 feet tall, with 3 levels of terraces and a temple on top. Can you imagine how many baked bricks it took to build that thing? Try 720,000 for just the lower portion. This particular ziggurat was built for Sumerian king Ur-Nammu. Similar to other ones, this pyramid has been around for thousands of years, so it got a little rough around the edges. Thankfully, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II and some archaeologists came to the rescue in the 6th and 20th centuries respectively. And now you can find this near Talil Air Base. The ziggurat at Ur was built in 2100 BCE by King Ur-Nammu for the moon deity Nana. It was the tallest building in the city, and you could see it from miles around. It was like the medieval cathedral spire of its day. People would come here to bring their agricultural surplus and get their food allotments and seek spiritual nourishment. Sadly, the Nana temple at the top of the ziggurat didn't survive, but we do have some blue glazed bricks that may have been part of its decoration. The lower parts of the ziggurat are pretty amazing though. The architects even included holes in the temple's baked exterior to let the water evaporate from its core. Since we explored some of the pyramids on our planet, let's take a broader perspective. They can be found in many parts of the world. Egypt has over 100 pyramids, double that number in Sudan, and dozens of others are scattered in the Middle East and China. The Americas have the most pyramids in total, with more pyramids than the rest of the world combined. These pyramids are located in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Time to know more about the evolution of pyramids through history. The oldest pyramid is in Egypt. This pyramid was a step pyramid, which was created by placing one layer of stone on top of another. The pharaoh Sneferu is credited with creating the pyramid shape we recognize today. During his 45-year reign, he built 3 pyramids. His first 2 attempts failed, but he finally got it right with the Red Pyramid, which is considered the first true pyramid. It was Sneferu's son, Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was the tallest human-made structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years. Latin American pyramids are similar to early Egyptian step pyramids, but they were built independently, with no knowledge of each other. The pyramids in Sudan were built around 700 BCE and are tall but much narrower than those in Egypt. How in the world did all these civilizations build these things without even texting each other? After all, the Aztecs, Mayans, and ancient Egyptians were about as different as possible. But despite their cultural differences, they all seem to agree on one thing: pyramids were pretty cool. Step pyramids are all around the world because they were the most feasible and stable way to build large and tall structures without access to lighter building materials like wood and metal. The triangular form with a square base is the best way to build a sturdy structure, and having a cube structure would require more material for less height. Now, when it comes to pyramid design, the Egyptian pyramids were like giant triangles with a square base, smooth sides, and a pointy top. On the other hand, the Aztecs and Mayans went for a tiered cake look, with steps leading up to a flat platform on top. So, while all these pyramids share the same basic shape, they have their own unique flair. Each group built its pyramids using different materials, techniques, and slope angles. So while they may have been inspired by each other's work occasionally, they were just doing their own thing. Egyptian pyramids had smooth, angled sides that were designed to help the pharaoh's soul ascend to heaven. The Pyramid of the Sun was built over a series of caves that served as a passageway for the deities. The Maya built the temple of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza to honor the deity Kukulkan, usually represented by a serpent. Nicknamed El Castillo, it has 91 steps on each side, plus a platform. That's 365 steps, one for each day of the Mayan calendar. Tell me, Brightsiders, how were pyramids built? To begin with, humans made them, not a foreign race from space that landed on Earth. You see, one thing that all pyramids have in common is that they were built without advanced tools or even the wheel. It took a lot of people to build them, including skilled laborers and architects. For example, it's estimated that 20,000 people built the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it's believed that most of them were skilled laborers. Building pyramids was a massive undertaking that required years of planning and effort. The Great Pyramid at Cholula, Mexico, took 600 years to complete.
If you walk through this small stone doorway in Hierapolis, Turkey, you might never come back alive. Back in ancient times, people thought it was some sort of portal to the underworld. Romans would go in carrying perfectly healthy bulls, but after a few minutes, they would watch these animals collapse as if hit by some mysterious force. But what's even weirder is that nothing happened to people. They could walk in and out just fine. Now, recent studies might have an answer for these eerie happenings, and it all has to do with people's heights. The gate, known as Plutonium, named after Pluto, the deity of the underworld, is a stone doorway leading to a small 32-square-foot cave. But the real danger is what is going on beneath it. Hierapolis is a super active geological area, and there's a big crack under the city that constantly emits volcanic carbon dioxide, which comes up as a visible mist. During the day, the sun dissipates the gas. At night, The gas forms some kind of a carbon dioxide lake on the sheltered arena floor. At dawn, you need to get out of there before it's too late. This whole place can turn particularly life-threatening right before the sun rises, when the carbon dioxide concentration, about 15 inches above the arena floor, reaches 35%. That means birds, bulls, and even humans can suffocate and pass away in just a couple of minutes. But there is a scientific reason that explains how Romans could get out of there unharmed. The carbon dioxide concentration drops quickly with height. So animals perished while their handlers, being taller and standing up, could walk out and breathe safely. Most people can't stay inside the Begarn fort after sunset. This 16th century fort, located about 146 miles from Delhi, is known as one of the most haunted places in India. During the day, the area is bustling with visitors who can walk through the main gate of this once grand fort city and check out the ruins of temples and palaces. But they will also see this big sign at the gate that dramatically warns everybody that all access is strictly forbidden after dark. That's probably because at night, according to locals, women can be heard screaming and crying in that place, along with the sounds of bangles breaking and strange music. Others have reported seeing shadowy figures and flashing lights among the ruins, or even smelling a strange perfume floating around. Yawata no Yabushirasu is one of Japan's most restricted forests, located in Ichikawa. The forest itself is a small area, covering just a little more than 40 square yards, and it is mostly a thick patch of mosu bamboo. Its location next to a parking lot and modern buildings makes it seem less intimidating, but don't be mistaken by its appearance. Since at least the 19th century, people have said that anyone who enters this forest is bound to disappear and never be seen again. So, as soon as you arrive, a sign near the forest tells you about its history and the curse believed to be linked to it. Some rumors suggest the creepy presence of an ancient samurai lord walking around. Other legends say that the forest hides a bottomless pit filled with poisonous gas. Whether these stories are true or not, today, the area is enclosed by stone walls, and entry is still strictly prohibited. In a valley called the Dark Entry Forest in Connecticut, you will find Dudleytown, but you definitely shouldn't go inside. Not only has the land been private property since the 1920s, but it is also known as one of the spookiest places on Earth. This place was first settled in the early 1740s, and many of the original settlers were from the Dudley family. That's why it's called Dudleytown. There's a local rumor that the town's founders were descended from Edmund Dudley, an English nobleman who lost his life for treason. The legend says this curse followed the Dudley family all the way across the Atlantic to America, and their misfortune is said to be responsible for crop failures, mental problems, and several tragic incidents in the village. Again, it is all just rumors, since historians haven't found any real evidence to support these claims. Still, the pitch-black surroundings and the eerie Blair Witch Project vibe going on in that place fueled ghost stories in the 1980s. This led to many cases of vandalism in the following decade, and because of that, the landowners closed the area to the public. This old abandoned building used to be the fancy palace of King Farouk's family, who was the penultimate king of Egypt back in 1936. After his family members passed away, the palace was turned into a morgue. Locals say that today, the whole place is super creepy and off-limits. Some people have reported seeing light bulbs flicker and shadows move around, making strange noises. Once, a group of kids allegedly went inside and totally freaked out when they found all the doors had suddenly disappeared, leaving them in complete darkness. They had no choice but to start screaming for help. This Hawaiian island has been off-limits to people for over a century. It's called Ni'iau and is the smallest inhabited island in Hawaii, covering around 69.5 square miles. It has around 84 residents. The island doesn't have cell phone service, paved roads, or power lines, just solar panels for electricity. A single family has privately owned the island since 1864, when a Scottish farmer bought it for $10,000, which would be around $250,000 today. The island has stayed in the family, passing down to its descendants, the Robinsons. They have kept it private ever since, so access is highly restricted and basically by invitation only. The Erdstall tunnels are a network of about 2,000 mysterious underground passageways mainly found in Central Europe, especially in Austria and Bavaria. These tunnels are usually narrow and cramped, often just wide enough for one person to squeeze through at a time, and they are believed to date back to the Middle Ages, as far back as the 12th century. What's really puzzling about these tunnels is their purpose. Despite a lot of research, nobody really knows why they were built. There is a theory that they were used for storage, but since many of them are below the waterline and occasionally get filled with water, that doesn't seem very practical. These tunnels have very light, almost claustrophobic sections and sudden drops, which doesn't seem practical for other straightforward uses like escape routes, hiding places, or even spiritual purposes. To make things even more mysterious, there is a complete lack of artifacts, which makes it even harder for researchers to figure out what these tunnels were really for. Since 2019, adventurous people can get arrested if they try to climb this rock. Uluru, also known as Ayers Rock, has been off-limits because it is now considered a sacred site for local communities. But the fact that it is also extremely dangerous probably played a big role in the decision to close it off to visitors. This rock is 1,142 feet high, which is about the height of an 80-story building. The climb to the summit can be very slippery, and high temperatures, which can hit 116 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, have led to people passing away from dehydration and heat-related issues. Something even creepier happens at the top of the rock right after storms. When it rains, small tadpole-like crustaceans called shield shrimp hatch in temporary waterholes and rock pools on top of Uluru. These extraterrestrial-looking creatures are about 3 inches long, and they spread their super-resilient eggs everywhere. When enough summer rain comes, they hatch and go wild, feeding on microorganisms and bacteria in the water. How these strange creatures end up in the fleeting pools on top of Uluru is still unclear, but the most likely explanation is that their eggs might travel there with the wind. In the northeast of Thailand, a family of enormous stone whales swim through a forest. These aren't real whales, of course. They're actually a part of a 75-million-year-old rock formation. A long time ago, this part of Thailand was just a desert. The movements of the Earth's crust pushed sandstone up to create these fascinating mountains. Reachable by anyone willing to spend a day hiking up the network of trails, this landmark is becoming increasingly popular with tourists. Once you reach the back of one of the whales and look down on the endless sea of green below, you'll know why. On these hikes, you'll find waterfalls, a wide variety of exotic plants and animals, and from the very top, you can even look straight across to the neighboring country of Laos. Their shapes look just like whales swimming together. No wonder this place is called Three Whale Rocks. What a way to see Thailand on the back of a giant stone whale. While digging in a Canadian mine in March 2011, a worker made a shocking discovery. They found a nearly perfectly preserved nodosaur specimen. This extinct dinosaur weighed in at around 3,000 pounds and grew to 18 feet. Despite being over 110 million years old, the nodosaur was so well preserved that you can clearly see the heavy body armor and scaly skin that covered it. It took almost an entire year of painstaking work to uncover the incredible find. The fossil was finally unveiled in a Canadian museum in 2017. Unexpectedly, analysis of the skin showed shading that the nodosaur may have been capable of camouflage, like modern-day geckos and moths. This is in addition to the spines and scales that already make it a walking tank. Still being studied today, this nodosaur could go down as one of the most important fossils discovered in a long time. Its detail could help us to uncover even more of the mysteries of the past. The Voynich manuscript is the world's most mysterious document. Since its discovery in 1912, the manuscript has been a complete mystery to everyone that comes across it. It is heavily illustrated with strange pictures of alien plants, unknown objects, and the zodiac symbols. But the most interesting aspect of it is the writing. The language used in the text is completely indecipherable. No one knows what it says, who wrote it, or where it was written. We don't even know if it was a real, functional language or if it was just created for this one text. The drawings of different plants are equally intriguing. Most of the plants in the manuscript are identifiable as plants, but they don't match up with any known species. A professor of applied linguistics in England claimed to have deciphered some of the characters in the book, but we haven't managed to uncover any more information about this mysterious text. If you're ever going to head down under, don't forget to pay a visit to the Mystery Craters in Queensland. Halfway between Bundaberg and Gingin is one of Australia's most baffling finds, and that's saying quite a lot for Oz. In 1971, the site belonged to a farmer growing zucchini and potatoes. As the farmer tried to expand his farm, he kept hitting large rocks in the fields while plowing. When he took a closer look at the rocks in his way, he found marine fossils and some strange craters. The farmer passed his finds on to geology professors, who set out to research the formations. When the geologists began digging around the area, they uncovered a huge layer of sandstone and ochre stain that was completely covered with craters. There were 35 craters in total, and the layer of rock is estimated to be around 25 million years old. The scientists studying this mystery believe that hot springs, former ocean activity, and meteors are the prime suspects behind the craters. And I'd like to know about the characters who named those towns Bundaberg and Gingin. What fun names! Now, the Antikythera mechanism is an ancient computer of sorts that's still baffling scientists with its extraordinary design. Around 2,000 years ago, a Greek ship sank off the coast of the island of Antikythera. The wreckage was discovered in 1900, and divers salvaged some of its ancient artifacts. When archaeologists started sorting out the discoveries from the wreckage, they came across an object that didn't seem to fit with anything else. The wreckage was ancient, but they found an incredible device that seemed far too technologically advanced. The machine functioned as a calculator, allowing its user to follow time, the movement of stars, eclipses, moon phases, and even countdowns to events like the Olympics with amazing precision. This level of technology is almost impossible to explain coming from an ancient Greek wreckage. No mechanism would come close to the machine until the 14th century, when geared clocks began to be built in Europe. How was the device, created so long ago, 1,400 years before its time? Could the sinking of the Antikythera and the loss of the calculator have held the development of technology back by hundreds of years? Meanwhile, the Caucasus Mountains near the Black Sea are one of the few areas of Europe that haven't experienced much human impact, even though most white-skinned people in the world are referred to as Caucasians. Despite this, archaeologists have found many ancient megalithic structures in the area. The house-like structures, known as dolmens, contain jewelry, bronze tools, and assorted pottery. Archaeologists don't know who built them, why they built them, or what their true purpose is. The stones were either two stones held together by a large stone as a roof, or smaller stones stacked as walls with a hole only on one side. There have even been stone plugs found that to seal whatever is inside. What's even stranger about these stone formations is that they aren't just found in the Caucasus. They're found all over the planet.
We're in the Caribbean, and these are the Taino people. Scientists have long believed that they were the first inhabitants of the Greater Antilles, and those people were roaming the Isles long before Columbus discovered this place. However, a recent discovery showed that there were some other peoples living there. These guys are called the Archaic people, and they are now known for being good at using stone tools. They've used a whole bunch of polished tools, such as hammers, axes, and whatsoever. We still haven't found out how they managed to invent and produce all those tools without special equipment. Scientists are now looking for a sort of necropolis, or a similar archaeological site, to find out more about these people. Another curious settlement was found a couple of years ago, not far away from Florida. This one is pre-Columbian too. but it seems that the dwellers there were more into fashion than crafting using stone tools. The scientists discovered a complex of 37 oyster shell rings. There were many households with these rings, and the locals would produce beads from the shells of marine creatures. By the way, long ago, beads weren't intended only for fashion, but they were also an important social instrument. People would sew them on their clothes to manifest their power or wealth. Sometimes archaeologists manage to discover whole cities. This is exactly what Eleni Korka, an archaeologist from Greece, did. She found the lost city of Tania back in 2018. It wasn't a lucky coincidence. The whole search took as much as 34 years. By the way, Tania was even considered a mythical city. The city of Tania was a Trojan-founded city, and the ancient texts claimed it was incredibly wealthy. Well, seems like the texts were true. The archaeologists found around 200 coins on the site. Some jewelry was found there too. For instance, there was an iron ring with a seal. They also found a gold coin that was supposedly used to pay for a journey to the afterlife. Yeah, back then, people believed that it existed, and they needed to pay for a ticket to get there. The discovered clay, stones, and marble floors help us imagine what their dwellings looked like. And the archaeologists also found some vases there. One of the earliest examples of human-made art is located in the cave of Altamira in northern Spain. The paintings in a Paleolithic cave are so special because they're not monochrome, but have several colors combined. Still, these earliest masterpieces were hidden for a long time. They were only discovered in 1868, and today, this cave is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Despite how old these paintings are, they're well preserved because they've been well isolated for all this time. Since the gallery was located deep in a cave, it was almost impossible for external climatic influences to ruin these prehistoric masterpieces. We are now in England, 2009. Meet Terry Herbert, a member of the Blockwitch Research and Metal Detecting Club. One day, he was casually inspecting plowed farmland in Staffordshire with a metal detector. I guess he must have wanted to find something special, but I bet he didn't expect to find what he actually stumbled upon. He discovered something that scientists later called the largest hoard of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver metalwork ever found. There's a list of items discovered, but if I start reading it to you, it's going to take me a really long time. To make a long story short, the archaeologists found 11 pounds of gold, 3 pounds of silver, and about 3,500 pieces of jewelry. No wonder this discovery is called the Staffordshire Hoard. The Birmingham Museum and the Art Gallery and Potteries Museum chipped in and bought the entire collection for over £3 million. Messages in a bottle are a famous cultural phenomenon we often see in movies, but it turns out this method of preserving letters is quite efficient. This is proven by the Dead Sea Scrolls. Back in the 1940s, Bedouin shepherds discovered 7 scrolls contained in clay jars in a cave. These scrolls were determined to be around 2,000 years old, but these manuscripts were only the beginning of a number of great discoveries. The Bedouins sold these manuscripts, but people continued finding more. The last discovery took place in 2021, and who knows, maybe there's more to find. Another piece of art recently found in a cave was a painted shell. This fossil was discovered in northern Italy, and scientists believe such fossils were collected by Neanderthals. This find is curious for a reason. Neanderthals are believed to have been quite primitive, but this shell proves the opposite. Back in 2004, Robert Muckle, an archaeology professor, heard about a peculiar site hidden in the forest of the North Shore Mountains of British Columbia. Robert knew that a few old cans and a saw blade had been found there. This place was believed to be a sort of logging camp, but a thorough excavation that took 14 years to complete revealed something different. Turns out, it wasn't a logging camp, but a long-lost Japanese settlement. The archaeologists found around 1,000 items, such as white and blue rice bowls, teapots, pocket watches, sake bottles, and buttons. The ceramics weren't that well preserved, so they only discovered hundreds of fragments. In one of his interviews, Robert mentioned that they also found remnants of a bathhouse. The community that lived there was pretty small, since there were only about 14 houses found. The scientists believe that they must have lived there in secret. People have changed their preferences over the centuries. Fashion has certainly changed, and our houses too, not to mention our technologies. But there's one thing for sure that's been unchanged: our love for food. Scientists managed to discover some of the oldest examples of people's favorite food. They inspected some ancient pottery and managed to find traces of best-loved food dating back to around 2000 BCE. It all happened in Sicily, and guess what that food was? No, it wasn't pizza or pasta, but olive oil. And there's more. Researchers from Egypt discovered some lumpy substance in some ancient pottery, which turned out to be cheese. It dates back to the 13th century BCE. I guess it didn't smell nice, since that cheese is estimated to be over 3,000 years old and was bacteria-ridden. Cool fact here, this cheese must have been quite exquisite. After studying it, scientists came to the conclusion that it was cooked with a variety of milks. They claim ancient people used a mixture of cow's milk and sheep or goat's milk. You probably thought, hey, you mentioned olive oil and cheese, but what about bread? Sure, bread is inseparable from almost any culture, and different people have had their own type of bread. And there's scientific proof that bread was one of the first dishes people learned how to cook. A group of archaeologists found some bread that was over 14,000 years old. 14,400 years old to be precise. What's weird is that people back then weren't familiar with agriculture. They were hunters. And technically, this old bread predates the age of agriculture by 4,000 years. Yeah, there's still much to learn about the ancient world. Here comes not the sun and the Beatles song, but here comes the bonus fact. And right, it's about the Beatles. Yeah, I know, they're not exactly new. The band was formed in 1960. But not all of our facts have to be thousands of years old to be cool. Back in 1966, the Beatles did a live performance of their song Paperback Writer on the TV program Top of the Pops. The BBC somehow didn't record the performance, and all the fans were sure it was lost. Nope. Turns out that David Chandler, a fan of the Beatles, recorded the show with his personal camera. It was long forgotten and stored in the attic for many years. The recording was rediscovered in 2019. I guess that's a pretty cool find. Imagine you're surfing a perfect wave, and then it suddenly freezes. Well, it sure sounds creepy, but couldn't possibly happen in real life, right? Wrong. You can see mind-blowing frozen waves in Antarctica. These waves occur when the ice gets compressed, and the ever-increasing pressure squeezes the air bubbles out. As for the beautiful blue color, it's the result of ice melting and refreezing. When the summer begins, an ordinary-looking river in Colombia transforms into a liquid rainbow. Caño Cristales, also known as the most beautiful river in the world, sparkles in 5 colors: red, black, green, blue, and yellow. It only looks like this for 6 months of the year because the aquatic plant that gives it the bright hues needs the right water level and amount of sunshine to use its magic. Australia is home to a unique horizontal waterfall on the coast of the Kimberley region. It's really just a fast tidal flow moving through 2 narrow aligned rocks. The tides can rise 30 feet. The falls reverse whenever the tide changes. Also down under is the biggest single rock in the world. It's so big that it even looks like a large hill. It has a circumference of 6 miles and is 1,150 feet high. The edges are eroded since the rock has been around forever. These mud brick buildings are 7 stories high and were built out of fertile soil, hay, and water that were made into bricks and left to bake under the sun for days. The ground floors were used for keeping livestock and grains, and the upper levels were places for socializing and catching good views. Antelope Canyon in Arizona, also known as the place where water runs through rock, has 2 sections of slotted canyons. Throughout the years, the water running through sandstone has created a picturesque formation like no other. If you ever set foot on the arid soil of the Namib Desert in Namibia, prepare yourself for an eerie picture. You'll see countless circular patches between 6 feet to 50 feet in diameter. Organized in a honeycomb-like pattern, they stretch across 1,500 miles toward the horizon. These patches are also known as fairy circles, and you might be disappointed by the explanation of this mystery. No one knows for sure the origin of these circles, even though there are numerous theories, from the radioactivity of the soil to the activity of sand termites. Mount Haleakala in Hawaii is one of the quietest places in the world. National park managers nearly failed to find any sounds to measure here. The place translates from Hawaiian as House of the Sun. It formed thanks to a volcano that got active 1 million years ago. The lava flows built up over the years and grew into a mountain. It has its own climate and weather that's impossible to predict. It takes almost a week by ship from South Africa to travel to the world's most isolated settlement of Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. You'd need special permission from the local government to visit as a tourist. About 300 locals all treat each other as family, grow their own food, and keep their island impeccably clean. Daintree Forest in Australia is the oldest rainforest in the world. It has been around for over 100 million years. Daintree is home to some unique animal species, 12,000 different types of insects, and about half of Australia's frog, butterfly, and bat population. The rainforest also has around 3,000 types of plant species. Rocks that travel are called sailing stones because they seem to move across the dry lake bed of Racetrack Playa in Death Valley National Park, California. As the rocks move, they leave behind a creepy trail that used to have scientists baffled. After all, some of the boulders weigh more than 660 pounds. On top of that, some of the trails are curved, while others are mostly straight, with unexpected turns to the right or the left. But eventually, NASA experts cracked the mystery in 2006. It turns out that in winter, the lake fills with water, covering the boulders at the bottom in ice. And since ice is pretty buoyant, underwater movements and winds make the stones move across the lake bed. In their wake, they leave bizarre tracks, only seen when the water evaporates in the summer. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela is often called the lightning capital of the world. Thunderstorms arise here 300 days of the year, with a peak in September. Sometimes there are up to 200 flashes in a minute. It happens because cool air coming from the surrounding Andes meets with warm air from the Caribbean Sea and generates electricity. Some places on Earth have less gravity than others. Canada's Hudson Bay, for example, used to be covered by a super thick and heavy glacier during the last ice age. The ice had pushed tons of rock mass outward when it started to melt. The smaller the mass of an object, the less gravity it has. It'll take another 5,000 years for the Earth to get into its original shape in this spot. Until then, you'll always weigh less here than anywhere else in the world. Five Flower Lake in China's Zhoujiago Valley changes its color from amber yellow to emerald green, dark jade to light turquoise, and sometimes coral. It never freezes thanks to underwater hot springs and never melts or dries up, unlike other neighboring lakes. The locals believe it's made up of pieces of a mirror that fell down from the sky. The surrounding valley has some narrow conic karst landforms, spectacular waterfalls, around 140 bird species, and giant panda, along with other endangered plant and animal species. Cape Denison in the Commonwealth Bay in Antarctica is the windiest place on the planet. It has unusual downslope winds. They are formed because of the continent's dome shape and the always cold climate. These winds are so fast and strong, they ruin the measuring instruments and the masts they are attached to. The record speed so far was 200 miles per hour. The Sahara Desert, which takes up 10% of the African continent, is extremely hot and dry. That's why it's one of the top places with the clearest skies. There's hardly ever a cloud above it. This, plus the remoteness from any civilization, makes it one of the best spots for stargazing. In Denmark, people experience blackout-type effects on a pretty regular basis. Just look how weird it is. But it gets even more bizarre when you find out that birds are the cause of this unusual phenomenon. Every spring and fall, millions of starlings begin their annual migration from Sweden, Finland, and Norway toward Britain, Belgium, and France. Denmark is the lucky place where you can observe sort sol, the Danish name for black sun. The birds travel in large flocks, which makes it easier to exchange information and stay warm. Before the birds land, they perform movements that look like dancing, but in fact, they are making different formations in an attempt to shoo predators away. And although the birds fly in highly synchronized patterns, people think that the huge flock changes its shape chaotically. The dark sun lasts only 20 minutes during sunset, and you have to be either fast or lucky to see this phenomenon. The secret of the cotton candy color of Pink Sand Beach in Barbuda is the crushed corals on it and tiny single-celled red organisms living beneath them. You can see that famous shade when the waves are strong enough to wash that mix ashore. The secret of impeccable cleanliness of this place is that it has no public facilities and is less crowded than other Caribbean islands. It took thousands of years to form Picaninny Ponds in Australia. This whole time, underground freshwater was slowly moving to the surface through limestone. It formed a large underwater cavern with white limestone walls. You'd need a special permit to dive here, and it's definitely worth it. Batara Gorge Waterfall has 3 natural bridges for anyone to walk across, take awesome pictures, and even have picnics. The waterfall is a result of limestone erosion that's been going on for millions of years, even though it looks like someone punched a hole right in the middle. It's located in the village of Tanarine, which is just 2 hours away from the capital Beirut. A village in the Meghalaya state in India is known as the wettest on the planet, according to the Guinness World Records. The average annual rainfall here is about 470 inches. It's a result of warm, moist monsoon winds coming from the Bay of Bengal, bringing clouds full of rain. It flows into rivers and waterfalls and never stops. The locals that work in the fields always wear basket-like covers to protect themselves somehow. The village of Leknes, with a population of about 3,500, is located in Norway, above the Arctic Circle. It has an unusually warm climate compared to other places in the same latitude. In January, the average minimum is 32 degrees Fahrenheit and rarely drops below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. July average temperature is 53 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty regular for many places in Europe.
The Avenue of the Baobabs is probably the most incredible and surreal avenue in the world. To see it, head to Madagascar. It's not the only giant thing you can find there. This island is also home to huge comet moths. Their wingspan is crazy, up to 8 inches, so you don't even need to look for iffy bottles with "Drink Me" signs on it to significantly shrink in size. Huacuchina looks like an oasis in the middle of a desert. Oh wait, it actually is a desert, but unlike many others, it has a bunch of clubs and bars. A fun thing you can do there is sandboarding and even bodyboarding. Make sure you've got the glasses on and your mouth's tightly closed. The Tunnel of Love in Klivan, Ukraine is completely covered with plants. Some couples believe that if they go through this 2.5-mile-long tunnel together, their dream might come true. Be careful what you wish for, though. There are trains going through this tunnel 3 times every day. The dark hedges in Northern Ireland seem a bit creepy because of the legend that surrounds this alley. The locals say the road is haunted by the ghost called the Grey Lady. By the way, guess what TV show was filmed here? In northern Portugal, there's a wonderful house that looks like a prehistoric building, almost like a cave, but it's an actual cottage. It's called Casa do Penedo, which literally means boulder house, and it's a tiny museum now. From far away, it looks like a huge stone and a perfect dwelling for some mysterious creature. Another such abode is in Italy, somewhere in the middle of Rishenzi. It's an artificial lake created as a result of flooding. This place is famous for its 14th century church standing right in the water. So the only time you can get there on foot is in winter, when and if the lake freezes over. One lake you can definitely take a stroll on is Baikal. No wonder, located in the heart of Siberia, it freezes over every winter. It's so large that it has 27 islands on it. It's also the deepest lake in the world, reaching almost 5,400 feet. Off to hot waters. Grand Prismatic Spring in Wyoming is the largest spring in the U.S. and the third largest water source of this kind in the world. Don't you dare swim there. Not only is it boiling hot, you'll also have to face a fine for that. Enjoy it safely on the shore. Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy, France is a top fairy tale destination if you ever wanted to feel like a prince or princess. The magnificent castle is surrounded by water, but not all the time. It all depends on the moon. The highest tide can be seen 36 to 48 hours after a full moon. When I was there, I saw only a deserted area with a few puddles. A night sky with thousands of stars has those romantic vibes, but the literal sea of stars probably has even more. Welcome to the Maldives' Vathu Island. The beaches here glow blue at night, thanks to the bioluminescent plankton in the water. You didn't think these were real stars, did you? If the stars don't interest you that much, you'd likely like the sky full of balloons. Cappadocia, a region in Turkey, is originally famous for incredible rock formations, but it also attracts visitors thanks to its wonderful hot air balloon experience. For those who always wanted to walk on clouds whenever they peeped out of the window on a plane, good news, guys! You can do just that in Bolivia. It's not a literal cloud, but an extremely large salt tile. It's called Salar de Uyuni, and it mirrors the sky during the wet season, creating that illusion of infinity and walking on the sky. In Colombia, make sure to visit the Las Lajas Sanctuary. To get to the church itself, you'll need to cross a bridge that seems to be hung right in the air, and there's some fast-flowing water underneath you. Well, we're back in France. It's Colmar-Alsace region, and just look at these houses. Colorful facades made of timber, canals all adorned with flowers, and cobblestone streets. Germany is full of cities with these cozy gingerbread houses, and Rothenburg ob der Tauber is not an exception. It's an almost fully preserved medieval town with dozens of multicolored facades and authentic taverns. It looks especially magical in winter, with snow-dusted roofs and awesome holiday markets. In Iceland, many houses have grass roofs. Such dwellings are called turf houses, and grass on top of them has multiple functions. It not only decorates, but also protects houses from heavy rains. The grass grows in the foundation made of lava rock and needs regular trimming. In Costa Rica, on the islands of Isla de Caño, there's an assortment of about 300 circular objects of different sizes. Locals call them las bolas, which is simply the balls in English. These stones have an almost perfectly round shape. Some of them are huge, weighing up to 16 tons each. They're also made of different materials: gabbro, limestone, and sandstone. They're considered to have been put in lines in front of the chief's houses. Nobody knows for sure where those balls came from, but some myths claim they originated from Atlantis. A place called Angel Falls speaks for itself. It does look idyllic. It's the world's tallest uninterrupted waterfall, many times taller than Niagara Falls. The water falls in cascades, and much of it evaporates on its way down, which creates an illusion of those beautiful clouds. If you're into dazzling shine, try visiting the Grand Crystal Cave in Mexico. You can only do so under professional supervision, but it's definitely worth it. Chances are you've never seen a crystal twice your body size. Oh, gravity, you heartless so-and-so. Well, that's what I think when I trip over a stone and fall face down. Of course, I'm not clumsy, you know. Anyway, gravity is a constant, right? Something entirely unshakable that we can always rely on in this ever-changing world. Unlike, love. Feeling romantic, sorry. But what if I told you that it's not as honest and clear as you think? There are places on our planet where gravity behaves like it's gone crazy. And that's why you clicked here. So let's take a look. Magnetic Hill in Leh, India. There's a stretch of road in India that's been attracting tourists from all over the world. It's no different looking from the surrounding landscape, and you could easily pass it by without noticing, if not for one very unusual and a bit creepy thing. If you stop your car on the magnetic hill going up the slope and put it on neutral, it'll start crawling upwards, eventually reaching the speed of up to 12 miles per hour. They say there's some sort of magnetic force at work here that tugs cars up the hill, hence the name. On top of that, even airplanes are said to gain altitude above this place. Skeptics offer another explanation, though. It's just the lay of the land that creates an illusion of going upwards, while in fact you're moving down the hill and vice versa. Whatever the truth, I'd like to see it for myself. Would you? Tell me down in the comments. The Crooked Forest, Poland. Near the village of Nowa Tarnowo, there's a forest in the depth of which you can find a strangely looking pine tree. Planted in the 1930s, there are 400 trees that sharply twist to the north almost at the roots, and then grow upwards in a semicircle. Although scientists offer different theories about the tree's weird growth, nobody can say for sure what made them look like that. Some say it's people who did it, while others believe it's a gravitational anomaly that somehow pushed the trees down. The trouble with this version, though, is that it would have had to stay there for years, and that only affected the trees. Still, no certain explanation exists anyways, so who knows? A waterfall, Faroe Islands. Ever seen an upward-moving waterfall? You can have a look at one on the Faroe Islands, halfway from Iceland to Scotland. But if you were expecting me to tell you an unbelievable story about a mysterious force pushing the water up the rock, then sorry, no such thing here. The truth, however, is quite jaw-dropping anyway. The winds in this place are so powerful that they lift the water and throw it back up. I guess it was this kind of wind that allowed Mary Poppins to travel on her umbrella. Sounds good. In fact, this waterfall is not unique. There are several more places on Earth where winds create an illusion of defied gravity. For example, there's the Kinder River in England that has a waterfall constantly struggling with the wind. It's so strong that half of the cascade's water seems to just fly up without ever touching the bottom of the drop. Hoover Dam in Nevada, USA. If you ever get up to the top of the dam, which is about 726 feet high, you can try a little trick. Take a bottle of water and pour it over the edge. You'll see the water flow up instead of spilling down. Once again, this isn't really any magic or unnatural phenomenon. The wind up here is simply too strong for the water to fall, just like with the waterfall on the Faroe Islands. Here though, it looks even more impressive since you can do it yourself. Dokkaebi Road, South Korea. Another gravitational anomaly located on a road. Locals once found out that if you put an empty can or a bottle on the ground, it will immediately start rolling uphill. Unlike other such places in the world though, Dokkaebi Road doesn't just create an illusion. When you walk down the slope, you don't feel as if you're going up. Everything's pretty normal. But once you put down an object that can roll, it will do that in the opposite direction than it should. Local authorities were quick to get the idea and put a signpost directing curious tourists to the mysterious road. Golden Rock, Burma. If you happen to be in Burma, these days it's also called Myanmar, make sure to visit this well-known site. A gold leaf-covered boulder sits upon the edge of a cliff, and a small pagoda is built on top of it. The impressive thing about the rock is that it only lightly touches the cliff for support. In fact, it looks like the boulder will fall any minute now, but it has been standing like that for centuries. On top of that, the pagoda built upon it is not really a recent addition, so it's quite an unusual sight to see. The rock seems to be saying, "Gravity? I don't care about that stuff." The legend has it that what keeps the boulder in place is a single strand of Buddha's hair. Well, I don't know about that, but you can check out the rock for yourself and see that it's not attached to the cliff by anything. And yet, it's not budged for 2,500 years. Something must be at work here, huh? Stone of Davasco, Argentina. If there ever was a thing that said, "I defy gravity" out loud, it's the Stone of Davasco. The huge 300-ton boulder stands precariously on the edge of a cliff and rocks a little bit from side to side in the wind. People even checked it by putting glass bottles under one of its edges. They exploded with another movement of the rock. Unfortunately, today you can't see this wonder of nature as it was a century ago. In 1912, the boulder suddenly dropped from its perch, which it had occupied for literally hundreds of years. The people in the nearby town of Tandil were so sad about this event that 95 years later, in 2007, they decided to restore the stone. Well, not exactly put it together chip by chip. They made a plastic replica of the rock and put it on the same spot and even in the same position. So even today, coming by Tandil, you can see its famous balancing boulder. More of a symbol now, of course, because it's no longer rocking and only weighs 9 tons, but instantly recognizable nonetheless. Devil's Tower in Wyoming, USA. Remember this place from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind? If not, you should go watch it, but not right now. This place doesn't make you feel like you're witnessing some magic and doesn't really trick gravity right before your eyes. Sounds almost boring compared with the rest of the sites on my list, right? But the true mind-blowing feature of Devil's Tower is that scientists can't explain how it came to existence in the first place. You see, it's an 867-foot rock formation with walls so steep they're basically vertical. But that isn't even the main thing. This piece of stone just rose amid rolling plains of Wyoming with nothing like it for miles and miles around. So how is it that such a flat landscape could have suddenly given birth to something so tall? Theories abound, but nobody has the answer yet. My theory? Well, perhaps here is where the Earth has a giant Audi belly button. Well then, you come up with a better theory. Oregon Vortex, USA. The House of Mystery in Gold Hill, Oregon amazes its visitors with gravity-defying effects. You can't stand straight there, always leaning to the side and having to hold on to something for balance. Balls roll upwards. And there's also a broom that stands perfectly still wherever you put it, unlike virtually everything else in this shack. The local Native American tribes called this place the Forbidden Ground, even before the house was built there, and they avoided approaching it. The owners of the shack, though, decided to turn it into an attraction, and they succeeded. They created an atmosphere of mystery around the place and spread the news about it in newspapers and later on the internet, and voila, a perfect anomaly is made. In fact, it's no more than a curiosity, a human-made optical illusion that tricks your eyes and other senses. Hudson Bay, Canada. Okay, we've talked about some pretty ambiguous stuff, but now it's time for the real deal, the Hudson Bay anomaly. This is probably the only place in the world where gravity is indeed lower than anywhere else on the planet. Even skeptics can't smirk at it because the difference has been measured with precision equipment. So, does it mean that the gravity here is as low as, say, on the moon then? Unfortunately, or is it luckily, I'm not sure yet, the difference is minuscule. The exact value is 0.005%, or 1/200%. You won't be able to feel it even if you try your hardest, but it's still there. Scientists say this anomaly exists because of the ice sheet that covered the area about 10,000 years ago. It compressed the rocks so much that they still can't fully recover, shifting the gravitational field in Hudson Bay. Sometime in the future, though, the gravity will return to normal in this area as well. No moonwalk for me then. This just in, the world's oldest pyramid was built during the last ice age. And I'm not even talking about Egypt. I'm saying our ancestors might have spewed a 27,000-year-old pyramid in West Java. Gunung Padang is not exactly shouting pyramid. It's more of a mound with huge scattered stones tossed all over it. But local people seem to revere it, and they have for centuries. It wasn't until recently that the Indonesian authorities decided to excavate a bit deeper to see what all the fuss was about. They ended up finding the remains of a human settlement. It was rather unexpected, since the mound is pretty high up. This excavation could only prove there were humans in the area as far back as 45 BCE, which sounds reasonable. It was up to an Indonesian geologist named Donny Hillman to prove that Gunung Padang is the world's first pyramid. He used all sorts of new technology to support his claim. Our guy used carbon dating, which digs deep into the earth and takes whole chunks of soil. He found layers and layers of constructions, like he was digging up Rome and finding ancient buildings buried in the ground. His research proved that there had been caverns and even rooms down there, which could only mean one thing: humans. As for the rocks located up in the mound, they were most likely strategically placed by the people who lived there back in the day. They needed a place to meditate, so they arranged things in a harmonious way. Their smooth surfaces wouldn't be the result of years of erosion, but the works of great sculptures, the Michelangelos of their day, let's say. If this is all for real, then human civilizations began way before we think they did. Our ancestors, the Paleolithic humans, didn't have what it took to be considered a civilization, especially not the tools and knowledge to build pyramids. They needed a lot of masonry skills, which weren't all that available during the last ice age. His peers don't share this view, though. They could believe Hillman's theory if he had found evidence such as charcoal and bone fragments, but he didn't. Flint Dibble, another archaeologist, says that without concrete evidence of human activity, there's no proof of an actual pyramid. In this case, all the data proves is that the soil in the mound dates back to 27,000 years ago. He thinks the rocks on top of the mound just slipped down the hill, like rocks normally do. Only a complex society would have managed to build a stepped pyramid like they claim it was. But according to Bill Farley, an American archaeologist, there's just no reason to believe there were any settlements in Indonesia during the last ice age. Now, just so you know, the oldest known ancient society with this kind of knowledge is probably 11,000 years old and used to occupy the region of modern-day Turkey. Take a look, Turkey's Göbekli Tepe. It's also not a pyramid, but it's the oldest monolithic construction made by humans. Back in the Neolithic period, a lot of people settled there, and there are proofs for it. For example, the walls there are covered in ancient drawings of clothing and wild animals. Until recently, the title of the world's oldest pyramid went to a three-sided construction known as the Djoser Pyramid in Egypt. Djoser is located just a few miles south of the Giza complex in a town called Saqqara. It made its way to popular culture more than once. In the 18th century, it became a common feature in European paintings. Young men from the cultural elite did a grand tour around the world, and Saqqara was at the top of their list. It was also featured in the video game Assassin's Creed, with a digital representation way more accurate than many historical drawings of the thing. That was kind of a big deal in ancient Egypt, to build pyramids for kings to spend their afterlives. And if you thought the Khufu pyramid was the oldest one in the world, well, Djoser was built 70 years ahead of that time. The development of new technology has allowed archaeologists to make groundbreaking discoveries, and a new, or should I say ancient pyramid in South America might win the title in dispute. It turns out that pyramids were also pretty fashionable in the Americas in the old days. Among them are the iconic pyramids of Guatemala's Tikal temple complex, the same ones that appeared in Star Wars No. 4. But to find the oldest pyramid in the Americas, one would have to travel to Peru. Deep in the Peruvian desert, archaeologists stumbled upon a sprawling ancient metropolis known as Caral. At first, researchers believed that the settlement was pretty recent, since the site was way too complex for ancient technology to handle it. As we said, Caral is a desert town, like Las Vegas, but without all the hoopla. This means no easy access to water, and for cities like these to thrive, they need a considerable irrigation system, which leads us back to complex technologies. The Peruvians surprised us all with this new discovery. This site was huge, filled with an amphitheater, houses, and religious buildings. The whole thing probably sprawled through 370 acres. And when scientists went to test their initial hypothesis using radiocarbon dating, they found that the city probably sprung around 2027 BCE. On the site, archaeologists found 6 pyramids that could possibly predate the one in Saqqara. As far as they know, both civilizations coexisted in the same time period, in opposite parts of the world. But since researchers can't pinpoint the exact age of Carral's pyramids, it's pretty hard to guess which civilization completed their pyramid first. If only we had a crystal ball. Now, it just so happens that the shape of a pyramid is something that nature is able to produce all on its own, leaving us modern-day humans a bit confused. A classic example is the Japanese site of Yaonagani, which also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 football fields and the height of a 5-story building. Explorers and scientists believe that Yaonagani dates back to 10,000 years ago. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yaonagani is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived into exploring the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. To him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. Check out this triangular-shaped pool on the monument's surface. Kimura thinks it's actual proof of humans, because this triangle-shaped concave is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. As it happens with a lot of these cases, not all scientists are convinced the same. For many, Yaonagani is probably the result of thousands of years of erosion, and the fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe it is not really human-made. Sure, these huge basalt columns may look like the ruins of a palace, but they're most likely the result of the intense volcanic activity in the region. And speaking of natural formations that really look like a human made it, a pyramid on Mars has been a hot topic lately. Humans have been keenly trying to prove that there is life on Mars for quite some time. But some are stretching it really far, saying that little green or gray people built a pyramid on the planet to try and build their own civilization. This picture was taken over a decade ago by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the MRO, but it started to resurface recently. It shows what looks like a 3-sided pyramid. Some people claim that the smooth side of the pyramid could only be the effect of otherworldly work. Then science comes along and explains that Mars is home to one of the deepest canyon systems in the whole solar system. The so-called pyramid is located in what is known as the Kandor-Chasma region. This Martian region has a bunch of similar formations that are nothing more than the result of erosion. Nothing supernatural going on there, apparently.